The gas pump clicked and stopped. I pulled the nozzle out from the tank of my Chevy pickup. Back in the driver's seat, I took a swig of coffee, staring out into a black-as-pitch sky. It was only 5 p.m., but the clouds were so thick and heavy, you couldn't see a thing without the headlights on. Damn it, still 5 hours to go. I glanced at the truck bed, packed to the brim, and let out a sigh. The pay for this haul was good though, and it needed to be delivered on time. That image from the convenience store, of the young clerk's arm, bloody with bite marks, kept creeping back into my head for some reason. Who cares? I'm just the delivery guy, I muttered to myself, cracking a dry laugh as I reached for the ignition. Clack! Suddenly, the passenger door yanked open, and a blonde woman dove in, quick as a startled cat. The hell? I jumped, instinct kicking in faster than my brain. My right hand darted out and pinned her shoulder, while my left hand was already pulling my Glock from the door compartment, the barrel aimed straight at her. Who the hell are you? Get out of my truck. Out here in the middle of nowhere, New Mexico. You didn't survive without keeping your guard up. People, or things, out here didn't play nice. The blonde seemed like she didn't even hear me. With shaky hands, she slammed the door shut as hard as she could and fumbled with the lock. It took her a few tries, but she finally managed to press it down. She was trembling so hard I could feel it through her shoulder, but I wasn't about to ease up, my grip on the gun tightening. Last warning, get out of my truck. She still didn't respond, curled up in the seat with arms wrapped around herself. Her teeth were chattering so loudly it was almost rhythmic, and she kept mumbling the same words over and over. Go. Drive. Please go. What the hell was her deal? My brows furrowed into a knot as I glared at this unexpected passenger. And that's when it hit. A sudden, spine-jolting crash from the left side made my hand twitch. I almost pulled the trigger. A pickup truck barreled past my hood, veering crazily until it jumped the road and skidded off into the distance. Jesus Christ. I wheeled around to look, spotting the mangled remains of my left side mirror. Now it was just a bare stick jutting out. The rage hit me like a punch to the temple. Before I could let it out, a white-hot pain shot through my right arm. The woman had clamped down on me with both hands and was screaming now, loud and desperate. Zombies. Zombies. Just drive. Zombies. The word hadn't even had time to register before a thunderous bang shook the passenger window. My heart dropped, and my head whipped toward the sound. It was a face, or at least what was left of one. Flesh dangled off jagged teeth. One eye was wild red, the pupil no bigger than a pinhead, staring right into the truck like it could see straight through me. My scalp prickled as pure, animalistic fear shot through me. Without thinking, I fired right at its head. The bullet shredded half its ear off, tore through a slice of mangled flesh. But this thing, it didn't flinch, didn't even blink. With bits of meat still swinging from its face, it just kept gnashing at the window, as if it could chew through glass. What in the holy hell was this monster? My brain blanked out. One thought remained, run. I kicked the truck into gear and floored the gas pedal. With a clang, the shifter locked into D, and the engine roared as the truck lunged forward. In the rearview mirror, I caught sight of the gas station. 10, no, 15 figures were staggering out from the darkness now. Not people, monsters. They zeroed in on my truck, twisting their bodies unnaturally before charging at full sprint. They're catching up, the blonde shrieked, her voice quivering. Catching up? Hell no, they were gaining like Olympic sprinters on steroids. I buried the accelerator into the floor, but even with the pedal screaming for mercy, the payload was too damn heavy. This wasn't a speedster, it was a lumbering beast, and they were closing on me minute by minute. Asterisk thump, 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 asterisk. I felt the impact of something scrambling onto the back of the truck. A decayed head popped up past my window, the empty eye socket from earlier, grinning grotesquely, with a skeletal hand scratching at the glass hard enough to make it screech. That sound burrowed into my skull like nails on a blackboard. Adrenaline flared to life. Not today, asshole, I snarled. I stomped the brake. Hard. The sudden stop yanked both of us hard into our seat belts, knocking the wind from our lungs. But it worked. The monsters clinging to my truck were gone in a second, tossed off like rag dolls, thudding and tumbling across the road. The ones running behind, they slammed face first into the rear bumper, as if the truck had pulled the trick on purpose. The woman on my right gasped, pale as a ghost, but somehow managing to swallow her scream. clutching her hands over her mouth. I looked back at the pile of bodies scattered across the pavement through the rear view. The ones that got thrown, they rolled for a while before they managed to get back up. Like it was nothing. I grit my teeth, hard enough to hear them creak. Slamming it into reverse, the truck growled with a guttural roar, and I hit the gas again. The truck jolted as if I'd run over something with the weight of a watermelon or a skull. And that's when it happened. Right in front of my eyes, I saw it. Words, freaking words, floating in the air like they popped out of a game. Vehicle successfully bonded. Data loading complete. Vehicle, 2006 Chevy Express van. Level, 1/110. I didn't even have time to question it. I shook my head, trying to clear my thoughts, because the remaining monsters had already adjusted their direction and were charging at me again. Running away was not an option. Taking a deep breath, I turned towards the trembling girl next to me and shouted, "Hold on tight." She snapped out of her daze and immediately clung tightly to the handle on the A-pillar. My eyes narrowed at the group of creatures baring their teeth and claws in front of us. Calmly but coldly, I shifted the truck into drive. "Come on, you bastards." The fully loaded truck surged forward like an enraged bull, slamming into the horde of the undead with sheer, brutal power. As the words XP+1 repeatedly flashed in my vision, the twisted bodies littering the ground finally stopped moving. Vehicle upgrade, LV2 0/30. Please select an upgrade reward. 1. Repair exterior and add armor. 2. Increase vehicle horsepower by 100%. 3. Install ramming spikes. Two of the monsters were still clinging desperately to the truck's hood. Was there even a question? What I needed most right now was speed. I made my choice without hesitation. Option 2. Suddenly, the truck shook violently. With a loud vroom, a surge of invisible energy seemed to ripple outward. I felt the gas pedal beneath my foot deepen as if the vehicle itself had come alive. Before I could fully process it, the truck lunged forward with unparalleled force. The two zombies clinging to the hood were flung off instantly. Without giving them another chance, I floored the accelerator, and the truck roared as it barreled away, leaving the monstrosities far behind. At last, I had a moment to catch my breath. I glanced sideways at the unexpected passenger in the front seat. Despite the streaked mascara and tear-stained cheeks making her look like a messy little cat, this girl, she was actually pretty. With her leather jacket, sports bra, and cargo pants, her outfit had a rugged, no-nonsense vibe. And those perfectly white teeth? Her background probably wasn't too shabby either. Beautiful and rich, those were my first impressions. Then my eyes trailed downward for just a second. Well, maybe not much going on upstairs, if you know what I mean. Realizing where my thoughts were wandering, I quickly shook them off. God, what was wrong with me? This was hardly the time for that kind of nonsense. She was still softly sobbing. I rolled the window down just a crack, letting in the cool breeze to help her calm down. "There's a pack of tissues in the glove compartment. Help yourself." I kept my voice as even as possible. She seemed to settle a little as the wind hit her face. Grabbing a few tissues, she started wiping her face in quick, uncoordinated movements. Honestly, I was starting to get curious about this girl. Despite everything, including the terrifying chaos we'd just faced, she hadn't screamed or panicked unnecessarily. Besides pointing out threats along the way, she'd stayed silent and hadn't done anything to get in my way, a rare asset compared to most people I dealt with. I inhaled deeply, breaking the silence. "All right, spill it. What the hell is going on here?" She took a few deep breaths, her eyes squeezed shut. After a long pause, she finally answered, her voice trembling. "My name is Carolyn Jane. I work for a materials company called Meyer. My brow furrowed. The name was well known, especially on the West Coast. Even someone like me, who mostly stuck to the Chinatown scene, had definitely heard of it. "My co-workers and I were here for a site trip," she continued. "The company is thinking about relocating one of its production lines to New Mexico. While we were at a gas station in Hurley, our driver came back saying the clerk had bitten him. Two co-workers went to check it out, but then, out of nowhere, the driver, still in the car, just started vomiting blood. And then he lunged at the guy riding shotgun. I got scared and ran out of the car. That's when I saw it. Inside the convenience store, the clerk tackled one of my co-workers and just ripped half his face off with a single bite. Then more of those monsters came shambling out of the store. There was nowhere else to go, so I jumped into the nearest car I could find, which happened to be yours. I frowned as her story unfolded, then my eyes narrowed. Wait, how do you even know my name? She hesitated, then pointed toward the dashboard, where the vehicle's operating license, complete with my photo and name, was displayed. I scratched my head, cursing myself silently. Damn it, totally forgot about that stupid thing. All right then. Next question, what's your plan? Carolyn looked utterly lost as she stared out the window at the desolate landscape. She shook her head. I don't know, but at the very least, can you just get me out of here first? My eyes scanned the horizon, noting the eerie mist now creeping across the landscape. I eased up on the accelerator slightly. Any idea how this whole mess started? She buried her face into her arms. I don't know, but it looks like anyone that gets bitten turns into one of them. I shivered at her words, recalling the bite mark I'd seen on that gas station clerk's arm earlier. Just as I was about to flip on the radio for any news updates, I noticed something blazing in the distance at the end of the dimly lit road. We were pushing 80 miles per hour when I slammed the brakes, hard. The tires screeched against the pavement as the truck came to a grinding halt, mere feet away from the source of the flames. It wasn't streetlights lighting up the area. It was a massive pileup of at least a dozen cars, all twisted together and engulfed in flames, completely blocking the road ahead. Holy crap, what happened here? Carolyn's voice trembled as she stared at the apocalyptic scene before her. Something felt off. This road doesn't usually get much traffic, I muttered, easing the truck onto the sandy desert terrain in an attempt to navigate around the wreck. But as we left the pavement, we realized the scope of the disaster was far worse than we'd thought. The scene stretched for nearly 300 feet, with countless wrecks and burning debris scattered along the entire length of the highway. Ahead, there was even a long-distance bus lying in wreckage. I was driving painfully slow, heart pounding harder by the second. Then, through the fiery glow up ahead, I caught the faint silhouettes of countless figures looming in the haze. I switched to high beams. The very next moment, both Jane and I gasped sharply. Damn, they were all zombies. Hundreds of them, swarming the area. Shit, I shouted, slamming into reverse and flooring it. The truck engine roared with desperation as we backed away. But that thunderous roar of the engine was like a call to arms. All the zombies snapped their heads in unison toward us, shrieking ferociously as they charged out of the wrecks like maniacs. On the sand, the truck's speed maxed out at a crawl. I could barely keep control as I stared intently at Jane's rear-view side mirror. Mine was already busted, hoping to back the truck onto the main road. But it was pitch black, the windshield cracked and smeared, making visibility nearly impossible. They're catching up. Jane's voice cracked with panic. Out of sheer anxiety, I lost all sense of decorum and instinctively clapped her thigh, barking, "Quick, get to the back, move the cargo aside, and look out the rear window to guide me." She froze for a beat, startled, but then grasped the seriousness, unbuckling her seatbelt and crawling to the back with urgency. Watching her awkwardly maneuver around the crates with her but sticking up, I felt like a pot boiling over with frustration. A quick glance back sent waves of terror down my spine. The closest zombie was a mere 50 meters away, flames still licking at its grotesque form. "Hurry up," I screamed, and as adrenaline surged, I didn't think twice before reaching out and giving her a firm shove on the butt to help her along. Damn, that was unexpectedly firm. The thought flitted through my mind but evaporated just as quickly. Survival was priority number one. Jane let out a startled oomph and probably flushed crimson, but she too recognized now wasn't the time to make a fuss, gritting her teeth and pushing harder to clear the chaos. "Just a few more crates," she shouted from across the stacks. But she was running out of leverage. She turned, face flushed, yelling, "Mr. Goo, push me again." "Fine." I shifted, one hand still gripping the steering wheel, and placed my right hand firmly on the curve of her backside, giving another hearty shove. This time, she slid fully into the narrow gap between the crates. "All set," her voice finally called from the back. "Turn right. No, to your left." I cranked the wheel left as hard as I could. The truck swerved sharply, barely dodging a few lunging zombies. Under her careful guidance, we miraculously made it back to the safety of the road. Good thing I'd upgraded the engine, or today would have been my last ride. Once on stable ground, even driving in reverse, the truck easily outpaced the horde. We left them eating dust, the haunting growls fading into the distance behind us. A dense fog was rolling in fast. After some deliberation, I eased off the road, pulling the truck behind a patch of desert brush. Shutting off the engine, I killed the lights too. Out here, with everything so silent, even the hum of an engine would be a death knell. Jane hadn't moved from her awkward spot atop the cargo for what felt like forever, so still it seemed like she'd fallen asleep. Curious, I turned to check on her, and instantly, cold sweat drenched my back. On the dusty fabric of her work pants, as clear as day, were two perfect, dirt-smeared handprints. My handprints. Well, this was awkward as hell. I opened my mouth, fumbling for an explanation. Jane, about earlier. I swear, it wasn't intentional. Things were just. Her peach-shaped rear shifted, and she twisted herself free from between the crates, finally plopping exhausted into the passenger seat. Lucky for me, her smudged makeup masked what was undoubtedly a very red face. She buckled herself back in without looking my way, mumbling quietly, "Forget it." She then directed her attention out the window into the thickening fog, frowning a little. "Why aren't we moving? You even turned off the lights." Given the near-zero visibility, probably no more than 10 feet, I muttered softly in response. "You remember how those things at the gas station found us?" She nodded. "And just earlier, those same zombies by the crash site were triggered by our truck noises." I paused, trying to connect the dots for her. I'm guessing noise and movement are what attract them. Jane quickly pieced it together. Smarter than she looks. Hiding here in the fog was safer than driving blindly and sounding the dinner bell. Retrieving a blanket from the back, I covered us both as the two of us sat in silence, staring through the windshield into the suffocating fog outside. And then, click, a nearly imperceptible sound pierced the stillness. Jane and I exchanged tense looks, neither daring to draw a breath. Click, click. The sound grew closer, more frequent. A shuffling shadow emerged indistinctly within the fog. Then another, and another. Before long, dozens of zombies crept soundlessly out of the mist, their bedraggled figures barely discernible. Outside my van, we were surrounded by grotesque faces, decayed flesh and exposed bone forming horrifying visages. Damn it, we were surrounded. The world outside had become a soundless nightmare. Hundreds of people who had perished in car crashes were now reanimated corpses, a dirty, rotting stream slithering past the small island of safety my van had become. My heart was pounding like a drum. Thump, 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 so loud I worried they might hear it. Both Carolyn, she wasn't Jane anymore, she was Carolyn, and I clamped our hands over our mouths, not daring to let a single sound escape. They shuffled onward with no purpose, some bumping into the sides of my van with a dull thud, growling in frustration before lurching off in another direction like confused, headless flies. And then, one stopped, right in front of my window. It turned its head, its vacant, blood-red eyes locking onto mine. In that instant, my entire body froze. My blood ran cold. I didn't move, didn't blink, barely even breathed. Time seemed to stop as I sat there, separated by nothing more than a thin pane of glass, holding a silent staring contest with this thing from hell. Every passing second felt like a century. It rasped, an eerie, wheezy sound rumbling from its throat. Slowly, it turned away and lumbered off to rejoin the mass of the dead. It wasn't until it disappeared into the thick fog that I gasped like someone rescued from drowning, gulping down air as my chest heaved. Another 10 minutes passed before the river of death finally drained away. "What now?" Carolyn whispered, lightly tapping my arm, her voice barely louder than a mosquito's buzz. I glanced back toward the storage area. Staying in the driver's seat was like painting a target on myself. "Go to the back," I whispered. "Let's clear out some space and hide in there." Hunched over, moving with the precision and caution of thieves, we worked to empty just enough of the cargo to make a small space for both of us to squeeze into. After my little glass-to-glass showdown with that walking corpse, I was in no rush to experience anything like it again. Curled up amidst the boxes, I ripped open one of the cardboard containers and fished out a couple cups of instant noodles. Carolyn watched me curiously as I peeled back the lid with practiced ease. The way she looked at me, you'd think she'd never even seen instant noodles before. And honestly, she probably hadn't. A pampered girl like her would have lived her life far removed from junk food. Pouring hot water from my thermos, I set the first cup aside for her and passed it over with a quiet, "Here. This one's not spicy." She must have been starving. It was her first time eating anything like this, but you'd think it was gourmet cuisine the way she devoured it, finishing to the last bite and even drinking the broth down to the last drop. Afterward, she sat with her knees pulled to her chest, watching me out of the corner of her eye. I leaned back against the cold wall of the cargo hold, fiddling with my phone out of habit, even though there wasn't even a bar of reception. "Mr. Gu," she finally spoke, hesitating as though choosing her words carefully. "You? What did you used to do before all of this?" I wasn't in the mood to talk, just motioned toward the dashboard up front where my delivery driver credentials were propped up. Then I shrugged. Her cheeks went red, and she quickly stammered, No, I didn't mean your job. I meant about you, specifically." I let out a dry laugh, lifting my head to look at her, sarcasm thick in my voice. "Aren't you worried I might try something?" To my surprise, she looked genuinely confused. "Why? You've saved me multiple times now. Why would I think you'd hurt me?" This girl, she was seriously too naive for her own good. Shaking my head, I reclined against the icy metal. "My parents were killed 2 years ago in a robbery. A bunch of thugs who mostly targeted Chinese. After that, I just started working delivery in Chinatown to scrape by." I saw her hand cover her mouth as a look of shock spread across her face. "I'm so sorry. The police didn't catch them?" "The police?" I repeated with a dry, bitter laugh. "A group of black guys robbing and killing Chinese immigrants. What makes you think white cops would care enough to actually do anything? Sure, they arrested a couple of them. But guess what? Over 20 of my people who fought back were arrested for violent behavior. You tell me, funny, isn't it?" Her head hung low as she quietly apologized over and over. Seeing her like that took some of the sting out of my anger, and I sighed. "Don't worry about it. It's my burden to bear. You got reception on your cell? Maybe we can figure out what the hell's going on outside." She pulled out her phone and gave it a quick glance before shaking her head. "Nothing. None of the social media apps work either. So we'd just have to wait until the fog cleared." Sliding back into the driver's seat, I told her, "Get some rest in the back. I'll keep watch." She blinked, looking at me, grateful, almost surprised. "Thank you." And just as she spoke those 2 words, a low hum reverberated through my head, the now familiar sound that announced its arrival. New text flickered before my eyes. Passenger module activated. Current passenger, 1. Caroline Jane, comfort level, 1. Caroline Jane, reputation, friendly. Friendly passengers within a 10-meter radius of the vehicle provide 1 survival point every 24 hours per comfort point. Note: passenger comfort can change at any time. I raised an eyebrow and glanced at her through the rearview mirror. She had already leaned back against the crates, her eyes closed, with those long legs stretched straight out. Interesting. So, killing zombies upgrades the car, and taking live passengers earns points called survival points? Comfort level 1. Honestly, in this terrible truck, even 1 point isn't half bad. The passenger module's interface also displayed a grayed out shop button. Looks like the survival points can be used to buy things from there. Just as I was contemplating how to activate the shop, a muffled sound came from the back where Caroline was. I turned my head to check, and there she was, crossing her long legs tightly with an agonized expression on her face. "What's wrong?" My heart tightened. This was my only point generator. Nothing could afford to go wrong here. She opened her eyes, her face flushed red, almost like she was going to implode from embarrassment. I need to use the bathroom. I can't hold it any longer." Damn, this was definitely a serious problem. I looked around the truck, my gaze settling on a stack of cardboard boxes. A thought hit me. I'll use the boxes to make a private area for you. I have a portable urine bag in here somewhere. We both scrambled into action, quietly and as quickly as possible. Once she was situated inside her makeshift corner, I leaned my forehead against the cold steering wheel and started silently chanting mantras to calm my mind. Damn it, now that everything's settled, I can't help but realize she's one hell of a looker. Her face, her figure, absolutely top tier. Especially in those cargo pants that do nothing to hide her perfectly round, perky ass. I gritted my teeth, desperately trying to regulate my thoughts. Finally, I managed to calm down, only for the faint sound of trickling water to immediately destroy my composure. Game over. When she came out, her face was red all the way down to her neck. She quietly set the sealed bag in the corner, hugged her knees, and refused to say a word. The awkward atmosphere in the truck was so thick it could have frozen a man to death. In an attempt to cut through the silence, I cleared my throat. "I've got a proposal." She lifted her head from where it had been buried against her arms, her greenish-blue eyes locked onto mine. "When the fog clears, we head back to Hurley." Her eyes went wide instantly. "What?" "The zombies. They're heading towards Hurley." "I know." I kept my gaze fixed on the impenetrable fog outside, lowering my voice but speaking with absolute conviction. "Hurley has a massive gun shop." She blinked, stunned at first, but only for half a second before it all clicked in her head. This world had gone mad. The rules had completely changed. If you didn't have the firepower to protect yourself, you might as well stretch your neck out and let someone do the honors of cutting it for you. She may have had a small handgun before, but it, and the rest of her belongings, had been left behind in that wrecked SUV during her daring escape. Now, she was unarmed. As for me, I only had a Glock and a knife, with a measly 7 bullets left in the magazine. Against those tireless, relentless monsters, that firepower wouldn't even make a dent. She looked at me again, her gaze shifting subtly. It had just dawned on her that while I might appear to be just some truck driver, inside, I had the guts, the kind of ruthless determination that made me act decisively. "All right," she nodded, agreeing to the plan. But then came the inevitable question. "But, with the fog this thick, and with Hurley probably crawling with zombies, isn't it too risky?" "I know." I frowned, my mind racing. "Here's the plan. Once the fog clears, we'll drive close to Hurley and circle around the outskirts, scout the situation before making any calls." Looking into those striking eyes of hers, I added firmly, "If it's too dangerous, we turn around and leave immediately. No matter what." The night dragged on, sinking deeper into an abyss of thick, suffocating fog. Every now and then, faint echoes cut through the stillness. The roar of engines, the screech of tires skidding across pavement, even the unmistakable sound of vehicles overturning and colliding in chaos. Then came the desperate screams, heart-wrenching cries of terror and agony. Caroline's complexion grew paler with each wave of noise. A few times, it looked like she was about to speak, to beg me to go out there and help those poor souls. But every single time, the sight of me sitting at the wheel, stone-faced and gripping my gun in a death grip, made her swallow her words. "You want to save them, don't you?" I asked, glancing at her through the rearview mirror, noting the inner anguish written all over her face. When she didn't answer right away, I scoffed. "Listen, I'm not going. You're not going either." I turned in my seat to face her, my voice cold, cutting off any argument before she could start. "You've seen zombies, but you haven't seen just how ugly the human heart can get. Think about it. If anyone finds out this truck is loaded with food and supplies, the best-case scenario is that we're forced to share everything with a group of strangers. Then what? We keep running, empty-handed, into God knows what." I stared into her eyes, my voice cold as ice. "And you're just a woman. Do I need to spell out the worst-case scenario for you?" The last word barely escaped my lips when, bang, a gunshot shattered the oppressive fog silence, startling both of us. Then came a second shot, and a third. By the fourth, a blood-curdling scream, one so inhuman it made my skin crawl, echoed from outside. The screams went on for what felt like an eternity, maybe 10, 15 minutes. Caroline couldn't take it anymore. She covered her ears, weeping quietly as she curled into a corner. Meanwhile, I crouched low in the cab, trying to keep as far away from the windows as possible. That night, the highway turned into a blood-soaked battleground. The sounds of collisions, shrieks, and frantic running filled the air without end. Our nerves were stretched to the breaking point. But, oddly enough, we owed our survival to that cursed fog. It became the best camouflage we could have asked for. Gradually, the chaos outside faded. Beep, beep, beep. At 7 a.m., my phone alarm went off out of nowhere. The sound caused my heart to jump straight to my throat. Panicked, I slapped a hand over it and fumbled madly to shut it off. Thank God, nothing came. At least, not yet. Outside, faint daylight began filtering through. The dense fog seemed to lighten slightly. I nudged Caroline, who was dozing against the back of the truck. "Wake up, the fog's clearing." Rubbing out the soreness in her arms, she nodded and followed my directions, rummaging through the pile in the truck bed until she found 2 bottles of black coffee and a pack of dry snack cakes. The two of us made a pitiful breakfast of cold coffee and stale cakes, all the while keeping our eyes glued to the window. A morning breeze swept through. The fog began unraveling like a shredded curtain, giving us our first glimpse of the roadway. And what we saw had us both sucking in sharp breaths. This wasn't a highway anymore. It was a goddamn graveyard for vehicles. The smashed remains of at least 30 cars were strewn haphazardly across the road, reduced to jagged piles of scrap. Blood, by now dried, stained the ground, mingling with dismembered limbs and mutilated corpses. Caroline clamped both hands over her mouth, trembling as tears welled up in her eyes. Typical. Her bleeding heart always kicked in at the worst times. Me? I had no time to indulge in her misplaced empathy. My focus zeroed in on one particular corpse, specifically the shotgun lying next to it. I patted her on the shoulder. Check the back. Give me a crowbar. Say what you will about Caroline's emotions, but at least she had a good head on her shoulders. Without complaint, she climbed back into the truck bed and crawled through the mess of supplies. Before long, she handed me a worn crowbar, the paint scratched and peeling. The curve of her body flashed briefly in the corner of my vision, but I quickly shook it off, focusing on the job at hand. I'll grab the shotgun. You stay here and keep an eye out, I instructed. Pulling the truck keys from the ignition, I shoved them deep into my pocket because, well, trust no one. Then, steeling myself, I cracked the door open and slipped out. Caroline, still perched at the window, didn't seem offended by my caution. Instead, she nodded, watching my back like a hawk. Hunched over, I crept toward the corpse. Once I reached it, I poked the body with the crowbar. No response. I crouched lower, cautiously looping the crook of the crowbar around the shotgun sling. Damn it! The sling was still hooked around the body. Muttering under my breath, I let out a frustrated huff and carefully reached down to unclip it. My eyes never left the surrounding corpses, darting back and forth to catch the subtlest signs of movement. Finally, the strap came off. I let out a small sigh of relief. But then my gaze wandered, just for a second, to this body's face. And I froze. A wave of cold terror slammed into me, starting at the base of my spine and rocketing up toward my skull. Its eyes were open, blood red, with pupils narrowed to pinpoints. It was looking at me. My mind blanked. The only thing left was sheer, desperate instinct. With all the strength I could muster, I swung the crowbar at its head. Splat. The sound wasn't bone cracking. No, it was more like smashing a rotten pumpkin to mush. Experience +1. I wasn't about to stop and contemplate that, though. Grabbing the shotgun and the crowbar, I bolted back toward the truck. My frantic footsteps must have stirred the stillness, because behind me, several other corpses began to stir. One by one, they slowly rose to their feet. All 6 of them. There are 6. Caroline's voice tore through the silence. She was screaming out the window. Don't look back. Just run. The closest ones within 20 meters. I sprinted as if my life depended on it. And it did. I fired blindly over my shoulder with my Glock, though every impact only slowed them for a second. It wasn't enough. Their guttural snarls grew louder, closer. Come on. Caroline was halfway out the cab, her arm outstretched toward me. Grab my hand. Desperation fueled my final burst of speed. I lunged toward her, grabbing on as she yanked me into the truck with all her might. I tumbled into the driver's seat, panting like a dog as she slammed the door. Or tried to. Something stopped it halfway. A rotting hand wedged itself in the gap. Caroline screamed, her boots smashing against the hand while she fought to pull the door shut. I tossed the shotgun aside, lifting my Glock. Click. Out of ammo. Growling in frustration, I flung the useless pistol away and reached for. The crowbar was just about to smash the hand, but another hand had already squeezed through the door crack. A tremendous force followed, and with a violent pull, the car door flew open. Caroline lost her balance and was on the verge of being dragged out. Thinking quickly, I grabbed her utility pants by the waistband and yanked her back with all my strength. But that rotting mouth was already in her face. I'm going to get bitten. Her eyes were filled with despair, just as that gaping maw came within less than 4 inches from Caroline's face. I roared and hurled the crowbar in my hand like a spear, using every ounce of strength to jab it straight into the zombie's face. Back off. I held the crowbar with both hands, pressing against it with all my might, my teeth grinding together so hard I thought they might shatter. Somehow, I managed to stop the damn thing's advance. "Move out of the way. You're not strong enough," I shouted at the paralyzed Caroline, who was still frozen in shock. Then, throwing a hard kick, I shoved the zombie at the door back a step. But in that slight hesitation, 6 more zombies had surrounded the car. I fought desperately, swinging the crowbar and kicking with all my might. Several times, those disgusting, putrid teeth grazed my arm and leg. Damn it, we're screwed at this rate. They can miss over and over, but I only need to screw up once for it to be all over. That hunting rifle. I cursed internally. Damn it, I was way too reckless. Just then, bang! A deafening gunshot echoed from behind me, and the pressure wave reverberated in my eardrums, leaving them ringing. One of the zombies in front of me had its head explode backwards like a watermelon, and it collapsed limply to the ground. EXP +1. CHK. Bang! Another gunshot. The second zombie's eye socket exploded into a gory mess, and it fell over immediately. EXP +1. Get down. Caroline's yell came from behind me, faint like a mosquito's buzz due to my ear ringing. I mustered every bit of strength I had left, kicking the zombie in front of me to create some space and letting myself drop backward. I landed right in her arms. The white girl who had been trembling with fear just moments ago now had a terrifyingly calm expression in her eyes. With practiced precision, she loaded the bolt-action rifle. The searing hot bullet casing ejected with a ping, and she fired her third shot without hesitation. It tore through another zombie's skull with pinpoint accuracy. Ding! Another casing popped out. This time it bounced against her waist, causing her to let out a muffled gasp of pain, but her movements didn't falter in the slightest. Another shot, and another zombie down. CHK. She worked the bolt action again, but this time the trigger drew only an empty click. No more bullets. Without missing a beat, she used the Remington like a spear, thrusting it forward with sheer force and staggering the nearest zombie backward. I seized the moment, using her thighs to push myself upright and drive another fierce kick at the oncoming undead. With a slam, I shut the car door, locking them out. The zombies outside began pounding frantically at the door. "No bullets left," Caroline shouted. Shaking off the buzzing in my head, I stomped on the brakes and twisted the ignition key. The Chevy's engine roared to life, and with a stomp on the gas pedal, the car shot forward like an arrow. "Brake!" Caroline screamed, pressing against me in the cramped space. Without a second thought, I slammed my foot on the brake, bringing the car to a screeching halt. 3 zombies slammed headfirst into the back of the truck. "Reverse!" I yanked the gearshift into reverse and floored the gas. The truck roared menacingly as it barreled backward, the tires crunching over the bodies until they were reduced to little more than meat paste. The truck came to a stop in the middle of the highway. I clutched at my ringing ears, taking a long moment to recover. Caroline, now in the passenger seat, was gasping for air. "Thank you." She turned to me, her gaze earnest and genuine. Before she finished speaking, I heard a ding in my head. Caroline Jane, reputation, trust. Miraculously, the ringing in my ears started to ease. Looking at the beautiful young woman, I spoke from my heart. "It's me who should thank you. If it weren't for you, we'd both be dead." This time, I was truly impressed. "You know how to use guns?" I asked her, eyeing her carefully. "Remington 700, she said, holding the rifle with practiced ease and performing another flawless bolt-action reload. The slick move screamed badass. "My dad was a competitive shooter. He taught me everything when I was a kid," she said, her fingers brushing affectionately against the rifle's stock. Her eyes held both fond memories and a hint of sorrow. "But he passed away in a car accident when I was 16. "The driver?" I started to ask instinctively. She shook her head gently. "They never caught the guy." "Shit." I didn't know how to respond, so after a moment, I muttered a stiff, "I'm sorry," copying her tone from earlier. "It's fine. It's in the past." She flashed a small, melancholy smile, her gaze drifting out the window to the rising sun. "So, are we heading to Heli now?" Remembering the life-or-death chaos from earlier, I felt a chill run down my spine. "No, first we find bullets." Under Caroline's startled stare, I drove the truck back and forth, running over the still twitching bodies on the road. EXP +1. EXP +1. Carrying a crowbar, I approached the navigator. Caroline shouted, "Quiet. Don't shoot unless I'm in danger. Save your bullets." The next second, the van roared like an uncontrollable beast, smashing straight into the zombie horde. 10 minutes later, I rolled back to the gas station in a wreck of a vehicle, its hood dented, windshield shattered, and smoke billowing from under the engine. As soon as it came to a stop, I jumped out and scrambled back into my truck. The system had already notified me that an upgrade was available, but only inside my own vehicle. As I shut the door, a buzzing sound echoed inside. Vehicle upgrade, LV3, 5/90ths. Host, please select an upgrade reward. 1. Increase vehicle size by 20%. 2. Restore vehicle appearance and add armor plating. 3. Double fuel tank capacity. I hesitated, debating my options. Suddenly, Caroline swung my door open, crouched down, and darted out. "What the hell are you doing?" I growled in anger, keeping my voice low. She bolted toward the wrecked van. Moments later, she emerged clutching a black backpack, quickly making her way back. "Have you lost your mind?" I snapped, barely containing my rage. Clutching the backpack tightly, she apologized hurriedly and pulled out a small black revolver. "Ruger LCR, .38 caliber. Birthday gift from my dad," she said, deftly popping open the cylinder and ejecting 5 bullets before handing the empty gun to me. "There are 30 more rounds in the bag." I accepted it. It felt icy cold in my palm. It was my first time holding a real gun. I tried to mimic what I'd seen in movies, flicking my wrist to snap the cylinder back into place. "Don't do that." Her sharp reprimand startled me. She snatched the revolver back and checked it carefully, her voice firm and serious, like a drill instructor's. "Movies are full of lies. Revolvers are precise. Doing that ruins the crane and ejector rod." Scratching my head in embarrassment, I muttered, "Sorry, never handled one before." She sighed and handed it back to me. "It's yours now." "Why?" "We're teammates now," she said with a small smile. "And your gun's out of ammo. Besides, I've got a Remington. Not one to refuse practical gifts." I took the revolver. She spent the next few minutes teaching me some basic handling techniques. Following her instructions, I pressed 5 bullets into the cylinder and gently pushed it back. "Good," she nodded. "Remember, a gun isn't just a tool, it's a partner." I tucked the revolver into the storage compartment, turned to her, and took a deep breath, my expression shifting into something unusually serious. "There's something I need to tell you." I locked eyes with her pale blue ones. "I have superpowers." "What? What are you?" She didn't finish. The whole truck suddenly jolted violently. Her incredulous eyes darted toward me as faint blue light lines began to materialize mid-air, quietly outlining the shape of the side mirror. With a sudden flash of light, a brand new mirror materialized seamlessly on the truck door. The passenger window, riddled with cracks moments earlier, also restored itself within seconds. This is, what?" she stammered, utterly dumbfounded. I raised an eyebrow. "Believe me now?" Before she could respond, the truck surged with energy as countless blue beams enveloped the entire vehicle. When the light dissipated, my plain white Chevy work truck had transformed into a silver-clad monster decked out in thick stainless steel armor. It gleamed with a cold, metallic glare, like something straight out of Cyberpunk 2077. "This is insane," Caroline exclaimed from outside, running her hands lovingly over the newly armored panels as if she were caressing a lover. Her eyes practically sparkled like a kid in a candy store. I tested the new features and found that the wheel armor panels had simple latches for easy removal, a smart design in case of a tire change. "This is so cool," she squealed, completely over the moon. Back on the road, Caroline transformed into a walking QA machine, firing question after question. "You gain experience by killing zombies, like in a video game? So if I kill them, you also get experience? Does that mean we're in some kind of party system? Does your system have a way to bind us together? Wait, do I have some kind of special role in your system too?" As I drove, listening to her rapid-fire deductions, I couldn't help but feel impressed and a little unsettled. This woman was scarily sharp. In just a few guesses, she had nearly pieced together the truth about the passenger module. She might be overly empathetic, but she was smart, capable, and honestly, stunning. I couldn't suppress a small smirk. Having a teammate like her? Not bad at all. The growl of the engine drew another cluster of zombies out of hiding, but this time, I didn't swerve or dodge. Anyone, or anything, in our way was obliterated. This upgraded armored truck tore through the horde like a tank, carving a path of destruction through the sea of undead. "Something's weird," Caroline commented, glancing at the rearview mirror. "Why do they all rush out of the houses only to retreat once we're gone?" I noticed it too. As soon as we'd put enough distance between us and the residential area, the zombies gave up the chase and shuffled back inside the wooden houses. And by the time we passed through the neighborhood, their numbers drastically reduced. I can't figure it out. Oh well, whatever. If something's in the way, just run it over. Before long, the 6 or 7-story buildings in the town center came into view. I could see faint figures moving on one of the rooftops. "There's someone alive on the rooftop," Caroline pointed out. "Survivors, that's all. Ignore them," I replied coldly. "But, no buts." I cut her off firmly, leaving no room for argument. "Save your saintly compassion. We have no obligation to risk our lives for strangers. You haven't been through true chaos, so don't lecture me." In an instant, my thoughts took me back to that wretched Christmas Eve 2 years ago. That night, Chinatown was bustling with lights and decorations as we prepared for the festivities. I had been out making deliveries from my parents' store. I'll never forget what I came back to. Dozens of people stormed out of Chinatown like locusts, arms laden with stolen goods. The usually quiet street was filled with shouts, smashing sounds, and chaos. I ran like a maniac towards our little store. A young man wearing a bright green bandana swaggered up to me and mockingly mimicked shooting a gun with his hand. Bang! "You yellow-skinned pig." One of his companions shoved him aside. "Come on. Damn it, you just killed someone. Let's move." Killed someone. My mind went blank with a loud buzz. When I rushed into the store, what I saw was the one thing I wish I could unsee forever. My mom lay behind the counter, a knife plunged into her chest. My dad lay by the shelves, his head caved in, bloodied from a smashed bottle. Later, when the police arrived, they said my mom had provoked them by saying, "Your mother must be ashamed of you," which enraged the man. All because of one sentence. All because those thugs didn't have enough money but still wanted their damn weed. So my parents argued with them. All because our fellow Chinese neighbors tried stepping in to protect us, wielding sticks and courage. In the end, those monsters summoned more of their gang and looted all of Chinatown. They stole everything we had. And they killed my parents. I didn't even get to see them before they were gone. From that day on, I learned a brutal truth. In this world, you can only rely on yourself. No one else. Kindness, empathy, those are luxuries for times of peace. Now it's the apocalypse. I glanced at the rearview mirror, where I could see the desperate people on the rooftop waving for help. My gaze was piercingly cold, devoid of any emotion. "Caroline," I said, my voice deliberate and firm. "Remember this. From now on, our world only has room for the two of us. Whether others live or die, it doesn't concern us." I shifted my attention back to the broken body in front of the vehicle and glanced at the begging figures in the rearview mirror one more time. My mind started to replay that horrific night 2 years ago, no matter how hard I tried to suppress it. It felt like the world had crumbled. When I finished delivering supplies and rushed back to our store, excited to join my parents for Chinatown's Christmas celebration, what greeted me were their lifeless bodies lying in pools of blood. My mom, my dad. Multiple bullet wounds riddled their bodies, still leaking blood. I stood there silently, unable to move. The entire world turned gray and black before my eyes. "Achin," Uncle Wong placed a shaky hand on my shoulder, his voice trembling. "Those bastards stormed in all of a sudden, with no warning. They stole everything, shot whoever got in their way. I saw one wearing a green bandana. He went into your store." Green bandana. A fiery surge of rage and hatred exploded in my chest. I grabbed a boning knife from the back and sprinted toward the chaos. A group of uncles and older men tackled me to the ground, holding me back. That's when I finally noticed the long overdue sound of sirens in the distance. The ambulance came swiftly, only to leave after a quick glance. There was nothing they could do. Then the police arrived, snapping photos of my parents' lifeless bodies with their cameras. It wasn't until the cold, blue sheet was draped over them, and their bodies were carried away, that I sat frozen in the back of a police car. That's when the tears gushed out like a broken dam. For the next year, I made endless trips to the police station. Every answer I got was the same rehearsed line. Group incident, no leads, an accident. Wait for updates. Wait for updates? What utter bullshit. So I bought a gun. I started searching on my own, wandering the dirtiest, most dangerous neighborhoods like a stray dog. I hunted that wretched bastard with the green bandana day and night. I got beaten, had guns pointed at my head, bore witness to the absolute worst mankind has to offer in lawless places. I realized just how vile human nature could be when unrestrained. Shaking my head, I forced myself out of those blood-soaked memories. Once again, I glanced at the pleading survivors. My foot pressed harder on the gas pedal. The atmosphere in the car was undeniably tense. Caroline pursed her lips, remaining silent. Why? Are there so few zombies here? She finally broke the silence, her voice hesitant. It's not a residential area. I rolled my shoulders. And I'm guessing the locals here probably had time to escape. No living people, and they likely won't come this way. Then how did they get here? She rested her chin in her hand, thinking, has the whole world gone down? The radio. We thought of it almost simultaneously. She immediately flipped on the radio and started tuning through stations. But after listening for a bit, we were both stunned. Every station was airing normal programming. News, music, talk shows, as if the world outside was perfectly fine. How is this? She couldn't believe it. Suddenly, she froze mid-movement and whipped around to face me, terror in her eyes. I know. Patient Zero, they're here, in Hurley. Quickly, she recounted what had happened to her. The driver at the gas station with the bite, the store clerk going berserk, the co-worker being tackled and bitten. When I went to get coffee, I also noticed that clerk had a bite mark on his arm, I added. The pieces were starting to come together. It's not airborne or waterborne. Caroline's mind was racing. It's bodily fluids. Getting bitten spreads the infection. That explains why there are still survivors in town, and why the radio seems calm. The zombie virus, damn it, it hasn't spread beyond Hurley yet. But why do they hide indoors? And why do they swarm together in the fog? Neither of us had an answer for that. Not enough clues. Don't dwell on it. I patted her shoulder. Let's focus on survival first. Up ahead, a wide building came into view. There it is, the gun shop. We tore apart some cardboard in the back of the truck and strapped it around ourselves with duct tape, making makeshift armor. Grab semi-automatics. Ammo compatibility is key. Get as many bullets as you can. Caroline reminded me before we stepped out of the car. I lashed a crowbar and a knife together to make a spear. After a moment's thought, I handed her a small revolver, shoving it into her belt. What's this for? She looked puzzled. The shotgun's too long to use indoors. Keep this on you for close defense. We entered the gun shop back to back. The place was a mess, and half the racks had already been emptied. I'll rest the gun on your shoulder, she whispered after slipping a tactical headset over my ears. I'll cover and shoot. You focus on melee. I nodded. The cold barrel of a Remington shotgun rested lightly on my shoulder. Step by cautious step, we inched forward. The far left, second one down. She signaled when we reached a rack full of shotguns. I grabbed it, feeling its weight. I've only ever handled handguns before. Benelli M4, short barrel. Perfect for close quarters, even for a beginner. Ammo aisle next. We pressed on but paused as we passed a fire exit. From inside, we could faintly hear someone crying. Caroline grabbed my shoulder and pulled off my headset. There's crying behind that door. Get the ammo first. Keep an eye on the door, I whispered. Quickly, we rummaged through the chaotic ammo section, managing to gather about 8 boxes of shells. I loaded the Benelli M4 to capacity and returned to the fire exit. The crying was louder now. Caroline and I exchanged a look. Gently, she pulled the door open. Don't. Please don't hurt me. A girl's voice shrieked from inside, startling us. Caroline immediately stepped in. Shh, quiet. We're not here to hurt you. Seeing it was a woman who entered, the tied-up girl calmed slightly, though she was still trembling all over. I thought they came back. They? I peered in, noticing 5 lifeless bodies on the floor, all shot dead. Who are they? Caroline asked gently as she worked to untie the girl. My neighbors. 8 men, the girl sobbed. Last night, everything went crazy in town, and we hid in the police station. Then they burst and said it was divine judgment, that God was purging sinners. Then they shot the chief. Where are they now? I pressed, frowning. I don't know. This morning, They said they were going to seek some kind of divine revelation. How did you end up here? They said, I was an offering for the messenger. The girl started shaking more violently, pleading, please, help me. Don't let them find me. Caroline looked at me with a pleading expression herself. Before I could respond, the sound of a pickup truck rumbled from outside. Someone's here. Hide now. I growled. We'll help you. Caroline whispered to the girl, holding her gaze. But no matter what, you cannot betray us. But the girl's face was already terrified out of her mind. She crawled on the ground, sobbing and screaming, Don't leave. Help me. Shut up. I almost pulled the trigger in rage. Scream one more time, and I'll put you down myself. We slammed the fire door shut and rushed up to the second floor, hiding in a corner. Soon, 8 burly men of Mexican descent stormed into the gun shop, cursing loudly. I didn't understand Spanish, but moments later, I heard the girl's cries. They dragged her out from behind the fire door. You should feel honored. One of the men shouted at her in English. You're about to be offered to the messenger of the gods. Messenger of the gods? What kind of nonsense was that? Please, help me. The girl screamed in utter desperation. Damn it. Caroline and I both felt chills run down our spines at the same time. I knew there were people here. That truck outside is yours, isn't it? Came a shout from the floor below. Go ahead and hide. The sun god's punishment is here, and you're all going to die. Bang! A single gunshot echoed. The girl's desperate cries stopped abruptly. Shit. They've attracted the zombies. Caroline, lying flat on the ground, spotted them outside the window. Dozens of zombies were now swarming toward the gun shop like a pack of wild beasts. You will become the next sacrifices. With a sinister laugh and the grisly sound of flesh being torn apart, a fresh, bloody heart was hurled onto the gun shop's doorstep from the first floor. Those maniacs had ripped the girl's heart straight out of her chest. They went into the fire exit. What do we do? Caroline asked anxiously. To the roof. The ceiling was at least 4 meters high. Hurriedly, we began stacking tables and chairs to make a way up. The zombies outside were drawing closer and closer. The scent of the heart's blood had driven them completely insane. Caroline pressed onto my shoulder, forcing open the roof hatch and crawling her way up. Come on. She leaned down through the opening, extending her hand toward me. I tossed my gun and bag up to her, backed up a few steps, then ran and sprung off the chair, grabbing hold of her arm just in time. Crash! The chair underneath me toppled over. Inside the gun store, the sound drew every single zombie's attention. As one, they spun around and locked their dead eyes on me, dangling helplessly in midair. Shit! 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 I cursed under my breath, clinging to Caroline's arm for dear life. All I could do was helplessly watch as they turned their drooling, rotten mouths up at me, their gnashing jaws growing ever closer to my feet. With her face beet red and veins bulging in her arms, Caroline exerted every ounce of strength she had to pull me up. Finally, I could reach the edge of the opening. Hooking my arms over it, I extended one last push while Caroline grabbed the front of my bloodstained t-shirt and hauled me onto the rooftop with one final burst of strength. The very instant my feet left the ground, a zombie leaped up, clawing frantically at my leg. It only managed to rip off the makeshift cardboard padding I'd tied there before plummeting back down to the ground. Both of us collapsed on the cold rooftop, gasping for air like fish out of water. That was way too close. Peering through the hatch below, we saw the creatures thrashing around furiously. Although strong, they couldn't jump 4 meters high, so, for now, we were safe. Those Mexican guys, they're zealots, aren't they? Caroline muttered, still out of breath. She ripped off her torn t-shirt from when she pulled me up, revealing the form-fitting sports tank underneath, showing off her toned figure. I followed her lead, discarding my own tattered shirt and sitting bare-chested. You understand Spanish? I asked. She nodded and began translating what she'd overheard earlier. They were saying, the punishment of the 5th sun has descended, and the messenger of the sun god is here. Quickly prepare the offering. I cut her off. Wait. You're telling me they think the zombies are their god's messengers? Most likely, she said grimly, pointing at the zombies below now devouring the girl's lifeless body. Forcing back nausea, she added, in Aztec mythology, humans were created from the remains of the dead from the previous ages. These creatures probably seem like evidence of their beliefs to them. Damn it, religious fanatics don't operate with any kind of rationality. If only we'd saved her earlier, Caroline murmured, her voice heavy with guilt. It wouldn't have mattered, I said calmly, sitting down as I carefully thought it through. From her behavior, even if we did save her, she would have gotten us all killed with her crying eventually. I'll admit it, there was a moment I seriously considered pulling the trigger on her myself. But at the end of the day, I just couldn't bring myself to shoot a living person. Besides, the gunfire would have attracted those lunatic bastards outside. What now? Caroline asked, glancing with dread down at the disgusting horde below. We searched the rooftop, then wait for our chance. The rooftop was littered with random junk, and as we dug through, in a corner, we stumbled upon a hidden weapon stash. When we opened it, both of us were stunned. Grenades, a modified AR-15, hundreds of rounds of ammo, and a ton of tactical gear. A Colt AR-15 with a forced reset trigger. This thing is totally illegal, Caroline muttered as she inspected the gun. Probably something the gun shop owner modded and intended to sell under the table. She expertly loaded 3 magazines with ammo while I fished out a scope, a suppressor, a muzzle brake, and a bunch of gear I couldn't even name. Caroline glanced at me briefly, her eyes lingering for a few seconds on the scars across my back before she looked away. It didn't take long for her to turn the AR-15 into a fully decked-out tactical weapon. She pointed at the 6 grenades I found and sharply inhaled. M67 military grenades, man. This guy had some serious guts. But just what we need to deal with the bastards downstairs, I replied with a cold smirk. She hefted the rifle, adjusted for weight, and then crouched by the opening, aiming at the zombies below. Ready to clear the area? She asked, looking over her shoulder at me. I glanced at her from behind, catching a rather distracting curve as she crouched. My throat went dry. I quickly shifted my focus, walking toward the rooftop edge to check the scene. Only a few scattered zombies wandered around outside. Try it, I shouted back. With a loud clack, she chambered around, braced the rifle against her shoulder, and fired a shot. +1 experience. I watched her body recoil slightly from the shot, and for a fleeting moment, one thought filled my mind. Damn, this partner is badass. Goo, over here, she called, motioning for me. Your turn. Get familiar with the weapon. I did as I was told, lying down and mimicking her stance, propping the stock against my right shoulder. She lay beside me, so close I caught a faint whiff of her shampoo. Don't close your left eye. Use it to scout the target. Your right eye goes through the scope, she instructed softly, her voice almost like the way my dad used to teach me how to drive. She leaned closer, her upper body practically resting on my arm to adjust my aim. Suddenly, I felt something soft. Oh God, no, brah. My thoughts went haywire, and my hands nearly slipped, dangerously close to pulling the trigger. She seemed to notice too, her face flushing slightly as she quickly got up to brush away the awkwardness, running a hand through her golden hair. Remember, squeeze the trigger and release immediately. Hold it too long, and you'll end up shooting full auto. I swallowed hard, suppressing a billion thoughts, and pulled the trigger. Boom. It felt like someone had punched my shoulder, a hard punch. Boom, 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 boom. Startled by the recoil, I instinctively held the trigger down, spraying bullets almost uncontrollably as the mag emptied halfway. Relax. Ease up. Suddenly, her warm hand gently covered mine as she guided me. Her voice was like a calm river, soothing my erratic heartbeat. You've got to feel it. Don't fear it. I panted breathlessly, the gunfire and kickback unlocking something buried deep inside me. 2 years' worth of bottled-up rage began to leak out, pouring into the weapon in my hands. All I could think about was wrecking, tearing, destroying. Calm down. Gently let your finger off the trigger. I inhaled slowly, and she helped move my fingers off the guard. When not firing, always keep your trigger finger outside the guard. Automatic weapons were incredible. Gripping the rifle again, I cleared my head, much steadier this time. Right eye on the scope, index finger ready. Boom, boom, boom. The red dot in the scope felt like the Grim Reaper's gaze, claiming a headshot with every single pulse. +1 experience. +1 experience. +1 experience. Click. You're out of ammo, Caroline noted. She demonstrated how to reload, and I sat up. Your turn. I'll reload mags and cool off for a bit. She took the rifle, kneeling strategically on one leg, and began firing precision shots. Why not prone? I asked offhand. Without missing a beat, she turned to give me a puzzled glance. Kneeling improves visibility. Why would I lie down? I just thought you looked great shooting while lying down. I stammered, instantly regretting it. To my surprise, her lips curled into a smirk as she raised her eyebrow at me. Then, as if on a dare, she laid back down into a prone position. Reloading rounds. I glanced over just long enough to see her hips twitch subtly with every recoil, and my pace slowed rapidly. When one mag ran empty, she got up and stretched. Your turn on the Benelli. Picking up the shotgun, I walked to the opening, braced it, and aimed. Boom. The blast echoed like thunder, hurling the gun right out of my hands as I staggered backward, nearly falling on my ass. Caroline burst into laughter, clutching her gut. Lean into it. My first time with a shotgun looked just like that. Flushing with embarrassment, I picked the weapon back up, steeling myself for a better attempt this time. Hold steady, press tight against your shoulder, and lean forward. Bang! A zombie's head exploded like a watermelon. Hell yeah. Damn. If only I had this kind of gear back then. Would have blown that green scarf scumbag's head clean off. I let out a cold snort and pushed the thought aside. Feel better now? I glanced over at Caroline, who was still grinning. She nodded. That's when I noticed a red burn mark on her waist. What happened to your waist? Oh, got burned by a shell casing in the car earlier this morning. No biggie. She waved it off casually, then slyly countered. What about your injuries? Battle scars, I quipped. Huh. A reminder of avenging my parents, I muttered, lips twitching into something between bitterness and pride. These past 2 years, I've been hunting the bastard who did it. She gasped and covered her mouth. You went to those neighborhoods all by yourself? Nothing serious. I shrugged, puffing my biceps a bit. Just camped out on the outskirts for recon. Besides, the guy who gave me this scar, he ended up in a far worse state. The relentless growls from below the rooftop interrupted our exchange. The gun shop below was still swarming with at least 100 zombies. Plenty of ammo, I said, reloading my weapon. Let's clear him out. After hashing out a quick plan, we took turns firing, treating the situation like a practice range. Less than 100 rounds left, I said, handing her the last 2 magazines. Most of the zombies in sight were taken care of, but a few stragglers were lurking in blind spots. Should we head down? She asked. Just as I leaned out for a better look, a burst of gunfire erupted from the gun shop below. Those Mexican bastards, they're making a move. Damn it, so much for slipping out unnoticed. I reached into my pack and pulled out a grenade. How do you even use one of these? Never tried, she admitted. Guess we're doing this Hollywood style, I smirked. Pulling the pin and counting off to 3, I popped the hatch and lobbed the grenade down. Boom. The force of the explosion rattled the entire roof. The gun shop's glass panels shattered into 1,000 pieces. Peeking through the hatch, I caught a bloodied Mexican aiming his pistol right at me. With no time to think, I instinctively dove to the side as a bullet zipped right where my head had been, leaving a clean hole in the hatch cover. They know this place, I yelled, grabbing Caroline and pulling her out of the line of fire. That metal door to the floor below, they'll use it to come up. You cover the right side with the shotgun. I'll take the left. Without hesitation, she readied her weapon, while I dashed to the rooftop's metal access door on the far side, shotgun in hand. Before I even got there, I could hear frantic Spanish shouting, followed by a loud bang and the metallic clinking of chains. They're coming up. I threw Caroline a quick hand signal. She got the message, pulled the pin on another grenade, and rolled it across the ground toward the other rooftop entrance. We hit the deck. The moment the door creaked open, the grenade went off. Kaboom! The metal frame of the rooftop entrance was obliterated by the blast. Shards of debris and slivers of steel turned into a storm of death, screaming past inches from my back. It felt like my insides had been scrambled, and I coughed up blood from the force of the shockwave. Damn it, that was overkill. Shaking off the disorientation, I steadied myself and peeked down. Several bloodied Mexicans were groaning in the stairwell, writhing in pain. One of them, less injured than the others, spotted me and fired off a shot. I whipped my head back just in time. Sweat drenched my shirt as the adrenaline surged. Shit. Grinding my teeth, I blindly extended my shotgun and unloaded round after round into their position. Asterisk boom, 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 asterisk. Each recoil felt like my shoulder was about to break. but I didn't stop until the chamber was empty. I cautiously peeked out. 5 mangled bodies. No movement. 5 down. I muttered, scrambling back to Caroline while reloading. She was trembling, totally out of her element now that we were dealing with actual people. "What do we do now?" she stammered. "Give me the grenades," I said through gritted teeth, my eyes bloodshot with determination. I flipped open the hatch we had climbed through earlier, yanked the pin on a grenade, and let it drop. Boom. Then I hurried to the other stairwell and did the same. "They're still alive," Caroline suddenly shouted. 3 left. I took a deep breath, my voice cold as ice. "We're pinned down. Waiting's not an option. We have to hit them first." Without waiting for a reply, I grabbed another grenade. Opening the hatch one last time, I hurled it before it detonated midair. The second the explosion subsided, I gripped my shotgun tight and leapt through the opening. Hitting the ground, I rolled into cover, gun ready to fire. The carnage below was total chaos. Blood, bodies, smoke, and chaos sprawled across the floor. The sticky remains of zombies made the ground so slippery I nearly lost my footing. The bastards weren't nearby anymore. I nodded at Caroline, who was above me. She tossed down her rifle and backpack, which I caught before helping her down. The entire gun store had been blown to hell by grenades, shredded and full of holes. From one corner, I heard a painful groan. I raised my gun and took aim. A half-bodied zombie was chewing on a Mexican guy, the same guy who had been shooting at me earlier. He'd been critically injured by the grenades, and after running out of ammo, was basically served up as zombie food. Caroline walked over and asked him a few things in Spanish. Then she turned to me and said, "He doesn't know where his group went." He begged me to put him out of his misery. She raised her shotgun without hesitation. Boom. His head exploded. I stared at her in shock. The look in her eyes, something had changed. We quickly scavenged every bit of ammo we could find. That's when I noticed it. The pickup truck outside was gone. "They got away," I shouted. "We need to move too," she responded. Just as we were about to leave, she suddenly remembered. "There's a laptop in the office behind the fire door. The USB drive. I'll cover you. You grab it," I told her. The moment she pushed open the fire door, a shadow lunged toward her. "Watch out," I yelled. Before I could react, a Mexican guy had snuck up behind her, an arm choking her neck, a tactical knife pressed tightly against her artery. "Drop your gun," he barked in English. I kept my shotgun raised, aiming directly at him. Caroline slowly lowered her hunting rifle. "You too. Drop it, or she dies," he screamed. Caroline gave me a frantic series of blinks. Shit, was she asking me to lower my gun? I lowered the barrel slightly, trying to buy time. "Let her go. You won't make it out alive either way. The sun god will guide me." His voice was unhinged, pure madness. "Your buddy already ditched you and took the truck. He left you to die," I bluffed. "That coward," he growled. "The sun will punish him first." But the rage made him sloppy, and the blade scraped across Caroline's pale neck, leaving a thin crimson line. Her gaze kept darting downward. I got it. Her revolver, it was still in her pocket. "Your sun god," I continued, slowly inching closer while distracting him. "Do you think he could take on Hong Jun, the great ancestor?" "Hong Jun? Who the hell is that?" At that moment of confusion, Caroline's hand shot into her pocket. Bang! The revolver fired through her pants, the bullet slamming into the guy's thigh. He screamed in pain, and in sheer desperation, drove the knife down toward her neck. Without thinking, I launched myself at him like a predator, lightning fast. Just as the blade was about to puncture her neck, I grabbed it. Barehanded, I felt the sharp steel cut deep as blood gushed out, but the adrenaline drowned out the pain completely. With my left hand, I landed a crushing punch on his wrist. He yelped and dropped the knife. I seized the opportunity, snatched the blade, and flipped him onto the ground. Locking his throat with my left arm, I used my right hand, still clutching his knife, and slowly, deliberately plunged it into his neck. 1 inch at a time. Squelch. Pulling the blade free, I felt his blood splatter warmly across my face. "Your hand." Caroline rushed over, horrified at the sight of the deep, bloodied gash on my palm, down to the bone. She tore the leg off her pants, feverishly wrapping my wound. Then she scrambled to find tissues in the office, shoving them into my hand. "Squeeze tight," she ordered. Now, the pain hit like waves of fire. It felt like a second heartbeat had grown in my palm, every throb matching the searing agony that burned straight through me. She dragged me back to the truck, threw me into the passenger's seat, and climbed behind the wheel. "There's a hospital in town," she shouted. The engine roared to life, and the truck launched forward like a rocket. The force pressed me hard into the seat. Slow down," I stuttered through gritted teeth, my lips pale from the pain. "The truck's been upgraded." Screech. A sharp brake threw me onto the floor. I hadn't even buckled my seatbelt. Just then, a system notification chimed. "Vehicle upgraded, LV4. Option 3. Vehicles can bind to one weapon. 100 rounds of that weapon's ammo provided daily. Third option." I gritted my teeth, enduring the pain. "Bind the AR-15. As the system completed the selection, an odd sensation came over me. The pain in my hand, it was disappearing rapidly. I unwrapped the makeshift bandage, and under Caroline's disbelieving gaze, the deep, terrifying wound began to close, flesh knitting back together at an impossible speed. Within seconds, my hand was completely healed. Not even a scar remained. "Health repair used, 1/3. Screech. Another sudden break nearly sent me flying again. "Are you trying to kill me?" I shouted at her, dazed and shaken from the impact. This can't be real," she stammered, pointing at my hand. "I told you, I've got superpowers." I buckled my seatbelt, trying to ignore the glimpse of her pale thigh where her jeans were ripped. My heart skipped a beat, but I quickly shook it off. We decided to leave Hurley for now and find a place to regroup. As the car rolled out of the small town, the deafening roar of engines tore through the skies above. 2 Apache attack helicopters thundered overhead, followed by the terrifying screech of an A-10 Warthog, its presence cutting through the horizon like the harbinger of death. "What are they doing?" Caroline asked, terrified, gripping the wheel tightly. I turned on the radio, but it was business as usual, cheery tunes and upbeat chatter. "Oh my God!" she suddenly screamed, pointing to the rearview mirror. The direction of Hurley had erupted into towering fireballs and plumes of thick black smoke. They bombed Hurley. There were survivors still there. Her voice cracked as disbelief and grief overwhelmed her. I stared into the mirror at the inferno swallowing the town, a chilling thought forming in my mind. "Head into the desert." "Now," I barked at her. She swerved sharply, and the car jostled as we veered onto the open sands. "Floor it. Drive deeper in." I snapped. Through the mirror, I saw another explosion. The spot we had been planning to stop at, the roadside motel, was now engulfed in flames. This wasn't about clearing the zombies. This was about tying up loose ends. They're exterminating witnesses. I spat, my voice trembling with anger. "What?" Caroline cried, staring back at the fiery destruction. "They've gone insane. Aren't they supposed to save people?" I ignored her panic, too focused on the growing sound behind us. The helicopters were coming back. The deafening roar of rotor blades bore down on us, thick with the promise of death. It was hopeless. My truck was tough, but helpless against an Apache. It was nothing more than a tin can against a war machine. And then they passed. They circled over us once, then inexplicably turned around and flew off. Why? Caroline and I exchanged bewildered looks, both at a loss for an explanation. The radio crackled with a new bulletin. Reports from Hurley, a small town in southern New Mexico, indicate a catastrophic natural gas pipeline explosion. State response teams, along with the National Guard, are en route to assess and assist. No survivors have been located so far. We stared at each other, sharing a look of silent horror and icy realization. So fast. A slaughter rewritten as an accident. Liars. Murderers. Caroline screamed, slamming her palm against the radio, collapsing into tears. "This," I said coldly, "is the real America." We stopped our car in the middle of the barren desert, castaways forgotten by the world. Caroline burst out of the truck, throwing a plastic bag onto the ground, screaming her fury into the vast emptiness. I followed her lead, stepping out and shouting towards the endless night sky. I could have fucking died today. I haven't even avenged my parents yet. I was about to be blown to pieces by your goddamn military. So why the hell shouldn't I scream? Caroline crouched down into the sand, hugging her knees like a lost child, whispering over and over, "I'm sorry. I'm sorry." Her perfect, unshakable image of her country had crumbled into dust. I walked over and yanked her to her feet. our faces just inches apart as I roared. What the hell are you apologizing for? What did you do wrong? This is the real face of your country. Wake the fuck up. And then, without warning, she lunged into my arms, sobbing uncontrollably. She eventually quieted, leaning against my shoulder. Her voice was calm but firm, filled with a new sense of resolve. We have to survive. And then, we have to tell everyone the truth about Hurley. I looked at her tear-streaked face and nodded. First, we survive. The desert night was brutally cold, and we huddled under blankets in the truck, sharing a modest meal of instant hot pot. Caroline had calmed down since her earlier outburst. "Goo," she said softly, watching the steam rise from the pot. "Why did you come to America?" I told her the story of me and my uncle. A typical tale of a tech immigrant chasing better opportunities. But because his achievements were stolen, he tragically chose to end his own life. We Chinese aren't afraid of hardship. I met her gaze seriously, speaking with conviction. What we hate is injustice. Your skin color, your background, those give you the privilege to live under the sun, always. But us? It's like we exist in the shadow of this world. After the meal, fatigue hit me hard. I leaned back into my seat, and just as I was about to drift off, a soft ding jolted me awake as the system notification rang in my ear. Passenger Carolyn Jane has provided 1 survival point. Survival point shop activated. I quickly scanned the shop, only to be floored by how outrageously expensive everything was. Repairing just 1 single square meter of the truck's exterior? That would cost 10 points. And swapping in the cheapest, lowest grade bulletproof tire? A whopping 50 points. Absolute highway robbery. The only thing that caught my attention, though, was the passenger attributes section. Passenger, Carolyn Jane. Attributes, strength, 5 agility, 9 perception, 12 stamina, 6 artistry, 1. Note, average adult female stats are 4. This girl, despite looking so demure and delicate, had uncharacteristically high stats, especially her perception, maxing out at a stunning 12. But then, artistry stuck out like a sore thumb with only 1 point. Oh well, nobody's perfect. As I was still engrossed in studying her stats, I felt Carolyn shaking me awake from my drowsy state. "Goo, look." I followed her gaze and saw the night sky in the distance painted red by flames. We carefully drove the truck up to the top of a sand dune and peered through the scope of a rifle to assess the situation. What greeted me was a grotesque sight. A military checkpoint was being completely overwhelmed, surrounded by hundreds of civilian vehicles. Inside and outside the barbed wire, chaos reigned. The scene was a full-blown war zone. The tracer fire from machine guns lit up the air, and in the glow of flames, countless dark figures were assaulting the defensive line in madness. Zombies. They're the townsfolk from Helly. Carolyn's voice trembled. In that moment, everything clicked. These were the people who had fled from the town of Helly. But upon their escape, the virus must have been carried among them. Now, at the checkpoint, the infection had fully erupted. It wasn't that the military didn't want to obliterate the entire group. It was that the sheer volume of people and the presence of reporters among them made it impossible to act without devastating consequences. Just then, a military jeep bulldozed through the barbed wire barrier, followed closely by a few battered pickup trucks, tearing off into the desert, speeding right in our direction. We quickly maneuvered our truck down to the far side of the dune, cutting the engine and laying low. And then, RRR, the unmistakable sound of an engine roared overhead. With a deafening crash, an old, beat-up jalopy came tumbling down the dune's steep slope, landing smack in front of our truck. A freckle-faced girl with thick-framed glasses crawled frantically out of the driver's seat, twisting the ignition key with desperation, but the car refused to start. Panicked, she glanced back over her shoulder, only to freeze, her eyes darting toward our truck, its cold metal surface faintly gleaming in the night. Without a second thought, she stumbled toward us, banging on the window and whispering hysterically, "Is anyone in there? Please, let me in." When we didn't respond, she suddenly pulled a wrench out of her overalls and raised it to smash the glass. "Oh, hell no." I threw open the truck's door, shoving the barrel of a gun straight into her face. "Please, I'm begging you, just let me in." The wrench clattered to the ground as tears streamed down her face. Her voice shook with terror. "The zombies, they're right behind me." Carolyn's pleading eyes met mine, silently begging for mercy. God damn it. I let out a frustrated sigh and barked. Carolyn, keep the revolver trained on her. I grabbed her arm and hauled her into the truck, dagger in hand, pressing it against her as I hissed. Not a sound. Were there zombies on your tail just now? Carolyn asked tensely. The girl was trembling like a leaf. A lot, less than a mile away. Carolyn and I exchanged a grim glance. Our hearts sank simultaneously. Less than a mile. For those monsters, that's practically no distance at all. Thud, 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 thud. The sound of heavy blows pounded against the truck's roof. So rapid, it sounded like hail. Dozens of zombies had poured over the top of the dune like an avalanche, spilling down and surrounding us completely. The roof, windows, doors, every surface was being assaulted, a grotesque rain of corpses smothering our truck in an instant. Inside, the three of us were barely even breathing. I stared at the distorted, pallid faces pressed up against the window, the glass bowing from the pressure. Some of them had their heads fully crushed up against the pane, their eyeballs swiveling grotesquely just inches away from mine. My only thought, glass, don't you dare crack. Carolyn clamped one hand over her mouth and gripped her revolver with the other, aiming steadfastly at the window. The second that glass gave way, she'd pull the trigger, no hesitation. And the girl, who called herself Murphy, she clutched her wrench tightly, folding herself into the corner, shaking so hard she might as well have been a leaf caught in an autumn gale. Time stood eerily still. Then, suddenly, as if commanded by some unseen force, the zombies shifted. Slowly at first, then all at once, they rose, snarling and surging away in waves. They were now rushing toward the direction of the escapees, their pickup truck's headlights and roaring engines serving like beacons in the dark. Inside the truck, we were left in deafening silence, the air dense with our labored, shaky breaths. I don't want to go through this ever again. My lips turned pale, and cold sweat soaked my entire body. Is it safe now? Murphy peeked partway out from behind the seat, her voice trembling. For now, Caroline nodded, though she still kept a firm grip on her gun. She looked at Murphy and asked, "Who are you?" The girl introduced herself as Miranda Murphy, the owner of a repair shop near Hurleytown, an orphan abandoned by her parents, living off the charity of the townsfolk. She recounted the eerie events leading up to the outbreak in Hurleytown. A bus with its windows tightly covered by curtains, a sleazy boss stumbling off the bus, cursing about being bitten, and a mysterious black Lincoln car. All the clues led to one terrifying conclusion. Hurley's zombie outbreak wasn't natural disaster. It was caused by humans. Can I stick with you all from now on? Murphy licked her empty food container after finishing her story and looked at us with wide, hopeful eyes. Caroline glanced at me, leaving the decision up to me. Before I could answer, she shut her eyes and pressed her ear against the wall of the vehicle. Quiet, she whispered sharply. I hear something near the car. Sniff, sniff. The sound of something sniffing the air became unmistakably clear. Sounds like a beast. Just as she finished speaking, bang, a pair of furry, bloody, mangled paws slammed against the window next to me. A skinned, bone-exposed canine head with layers of razor-sharp teeth lunged at us, snapping its gaping maw hungrily. Shit, I screamed, nearly falling out of my seat in terror. They can smell us. Drive, Caroline shouted. I slammed my foot down on the gas. The car jolted forward like a bullet fired from a gun. Hold on. In the rearview mirror, 5 zombie dogs darted after us like phantoms, much faster than any human-like zombies we'd encountered. Their speed was unreal. Brace yourselves, I shouted as I slammed the brakes. The car skidded across the desert sands for at least 20 meters. The 2 zombie dogs clawing at the windows were flung violently away by the sudden stop. But the 3 remaining ones? They dodged, predictably fanning out, completely unscathed. These damn creatures, they can think. Grenade, I yelled. Last one, Caroline responded. I'll throw it. Murphy snatched the grenade, climbed into the passenger seat, and yelled, roll the window down. Clutching the grenade tightly, she glanced at the rearview mirror and coolly pulled the pin. Silently counting to 3, she hurled it with all her might. Boom! A deafening explosion sent a scorching heat wave slamming into the back of the car. It's over, Murphy exclaimed triumphantly, but her moment was cut short as she glanced back at the mirror. Her face twisted in shock. What? I demanded. There were still 2 zombie dogs charging after us like possessed demons. The middle 3 sacrificed themselves, shielding the shrapnel. Murphy yelled, disbelief thick in her voice. They knew how to sacrifice themselves for their pack? Get over here. Caroline barked at Murphy and then looped the strap of her AR-15 rifle over her shoulder. She and Murphy quickly swapped places. Caroline rolled down the window and shouted back at Murphy and me, "Hold on to me." Murphy grabbed one side of her waistband, and I took hold of the other, gripping it with all my strength. Caroline hung out of the window, her body half out of the car. The uneven desert terrain made it near impossible for her to steady her aim. "Turn right," she ordered sharply as one of the zombie dogs made its way out of her line of sight. I twisted the steering wheel with all my might. Bang, 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 asterisk asterisk. Plus 20 XP. One more. Turn right again. Bang, 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 asterisk asterisk. Plus 20 XP. All clear. Pull me back in. Murphy and I hurriedly yanked her back into the car. She collapsed into the passenger seat and immediately froze, her expression turning to one of embarrassment and mortification. Turns out, she'd accidentally sat on my hand, which I hadn't managed to pull back in time. The cool, soft, and springy feeling of her weight caught me completely off guard. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. Caroline's face turned bright red, all the way to the tips of her ears. Like she'd touched something scalding, she yanked my hand away from beneath her. That was close," she stammered, covering her face and breaking the silence. "Why, yeah, really close," I awkwardly replied. "You too. You're not a couple." From the back seat, Murphy peered at us like we were aliens from another planet. Caroline and I exchanged a glance, neither of us saying a word. "Welcome aboard," I finally answered, granting Murphy's request to join us. Passenger module updated. New passenger added, Miranda Murphy. Special attribute, repair, inactive. We're heading east. Murphy excitedly tapped the back of my seat. "Why?" Caroline and I asked in unison. "So in sync, aren't you?" Murphy scoffed lightly, then leaned closer with a mysterious tone. "There's a secret warehouse of mine out here in the desert. I'm giving this baby of ours a proper upgrade." The truck rumbled through the pitch-black desert as Caroline caught a glimpse of Murphy curiously rummaging through my cargo in the rearview mirror. She nudged my arm gently, tilted her head toward Murphy, and mimicked throwing a grenade with a questioning look in her eyes. I got what she meant and shook my head. A grenade toss from Murphy hadn't exactly earned me any experience points. It seems only passengers who reach a trusted reputation level can form this kind of peculiar link with me. Past that dune up ahead, then 8 more miles, and we'll be there. Murphy leaned over from the back, clutching Caroline's seat as she directed us. "This warehouse of yours, is it safe?" I asked warily. "There are zombies everywhere in the desert now, not to mention those dogs." "It's just a big tin shack," Murphy said with a playful blink. "But don't worry, I've got ways to handle those dogs. They hate the smell of gasoline." 15 minutes later, we arrived. Faced with the so-called warehouse, a makeshift structure of rusted metal sheets and duct tape that looked like it could collapse with a strong gust of wind, both Caroline and I fell silent. Carefully, we hauled out a few barrels of gasoline from the warehouse, then wrapped gasoline-soaked cloth around the truck's body. That sharp, overwhelming odor quickly filled the air. The 3 of us huddled back into the truck, swaddled in blankets to fend off the biting cold of the desert night. "Where did you 2 set out from to get to Hurley?" Murphy asked, curious. Caroline gave her a basic rundown but kept her connection to Meyer Corporation under wraps. As for me, I recounted our run-in with those Mexican zealots at the gun shop. "Priya?" Murphy said with a look of surprise after hearing my description. "She's a pretty timid girl. I wouldn't call them zealots, though. They're a hard-working bunch. Actually, they helped me build this warehouse." "People can surprise you," I replied in Chinese. "I agree." Caroline suddenly chimed in with perfect Mandarin. I froze, a bit taken aback. "Wait, you understood that?" She gave me a mischievous grin and wiggled her eyebrows. "I studied in your capital city for 2 years. Then how is it you still don't know how to blow on hot food before eating?" I teased with a playful roll of my eyes. "Guilty," she muttered, hiding her face in her knees, her voice muffled. The 3 of us kept watch under the countless stars above. A shooting star streaked across the sky, And just as I was about to make a wish, a strange shadow on the distant dune caught my eye. I instinctively grabbed my rifle and peered through the scope to get a better look. Whatever it wasn't human. A tall, spindly figure stood bathed in moonlight. Its arms were unnaturally long and thin, far out of proportion to its body. But its hands, that's what sent a chill up my spine. Each hand had only 3 fingers, and each finger was nearly the length of its forearm. They hung limply at its sides like 3 razor-sharp scythes. As I watched, the figure slowly raised its unnerving hands high into the air. Then, from every direction, hordes of zombies began converging on it like a rising tide. Even a few zombie dogs were among their numbers. What the hell's that? Caroline, now wide awake, was pressed against my side, staring through the scope as well. What we witnessed next would be burned into our memories forever. That shadow began its slaughter. Its unnaturally long fingers turned into a deadly whirlwind. Zombies were decapitated with shocking ease. Their heads flew into the air like discarded toys. A lunging zombie dog was cleaved in midair, its body split in 2 before it could even land. This wasn't a fight. It was a massacre, a cold, methodical, brutal work of artistry. For over half an hour, it continued its relentless carnage. By the time it stopped, the dune had become a grotesque battlefield littered with severed limbs and decaying flesh. The few remaining zombies and zombie dogs didn't scatter. Instead, they stood frozen, docile and eerily submissive, like sheep under the shadow's command. Then, it raised its arms once again and let out a bone-chilling shriek, a sound that didn't belong in this world. It was sharp yet guttural, slithering through the air like twisted needles piercing into our eardrums. The sheer sound sent my head spinning. It felt as though my skull was about to shatter. Caroline vomited immediately, unable to handle the noise. Murphy outright passed out, eyes rolling back into her head. When the screaming stopped, Caroline and I slumped back, gasping for air like fish on dry land. Through the scope, I saw the shadow lead its new recruits, the remaining zombies. It was like watching a hunter proudly guiding their pack of hounds as they slowly headed in the direction of the outpost. What in God's name was that thing? Caroline's voice was shaky as she sat in a pile of her tears and sick. It controls them by slaughtering them. I rubbed my temples, trying to dull the pounding in my head. I think zombies might be some kind of bioweapon. I paused, dread creeping into my voice. And that thing is something far, far worse. If it's a weapon, there must be a way to control it. That shadow, it might just be the controller. Something so inhumane. How could that possibly be man-made? Carolyn said, struggling to accept what she was hearing. I looked at her, my voice cold and accusatory. Have you forgotten Fort Detrick? Or that virus that swept across the globe? She fell silent. This country is a puppet of corporate greed. As long as there's profit to be had, the military-industrial complex would stoop to anything, I said, pulling out a map and pointing to the border between the US and Mexico. Remember what Murphy told us about that bus? It was found along Highway 10. Carolyn gazed at the map, following my finger. Highway 10 extends southeast, eventually leading to El Paso, and then crossing into Mexico. And beyond the border lies the world's most infamous city of sin, Juarez. My guess, I said, watching the fear widen her eyes, enunciating each word with deliberate intensity, is that the zombies from that bus were headed straight for Juarez. They wanted to turn a Mexican city into their live testing ground. Carolyn clapped her hand over her mouth, her face paling. My theory had shattered the belief system she'd held onto her entire life. Once in Juarez, I traced my finger across the map, my voice icy. They'd only have to seal off the border bridge to contain the plague outside the US at a safe distance. And Juarez, being right next door, would serve as an excellent live observation point. Those people in the Lincoln? My guess is they were observers. I reached over to help her brush dirt off her work pants, then continued, what I don't know is whether they turned into zombies themselves or managed to escape. She couldn't hold it in anymore. Holding her face with both hands, her tears slipped silently through her fingers. To someone like Carolyn, a well-educated, privileged white elite, this country had always been a shining beacon, a symbol of freedom and democracy. But now, beneath the shadow of that lighthouse, she glimpsed a darkness she couldn't have fathomed. A vile, stomach-churning darkness. I gently patted her trembling shoulder. Welcome to the real America. She lifted her head. Tear-streaked and confused, she looked utterly lost. What do I do now? I pointed to the horizon, where storm clouds were gathering. You said you wanted to survive. So we survive. Murphy woke us up, shaking us out of restless slumber. Get up, she shouted, full of energy. As she noticed the stains on Carolyn's work pants, her eyes went wide. Wait, are you throwing up? Are you pregnant? Carolyn quickly waved her hands. I, stifling a blend of exasperation and amusement, explained about the terrifying scream we'd heard last night from that shadowy figure. That knocked me out. Murphy touched her ears, looking genuinely baffled, her casual attitude borderline infuriating. And it just left? Took the zombies with it? So it has a mind of its own? Do you think there are more out there? Could they, disagree or fight each other? Her rapid-fire questions came at me like a submachine gun, but they hit squarely on a terrifying thought. If there were multiple creatures capable of controlling zombies, creatures that might fight among themselves, the future could become even more chaotic than I'd dared imagine. Don't just sit there daydreaming, boss, Murphy said as she climbed into the back and tapped the back of my seat. I checked the area, it's all clear, and there's a warehouse nearby where we can rinse off. Orders, I sighed, too drained to think about mysteries that had no immediate answers. Everyone, regroup and get cleaned up. Got it, Murphy cheered, hopping out of the vehicle and dashing toward the warehouse. You clean up inside while I give our baby here a little upgrade. Carolyn grabbed the trash and climbed down too. I started to offer help, but she jumped away as if I'd startled her. No, don't. That's when I noticed two bulging urination bags in with the garbage. The situation was, to put it mildly, rather awkward. What's taking you two so long? Get over here, Murphy yelled, waving from the warehouse door. She tossed a grimy towel at Carolyn before shoving her into some makeshift shower area made of corrugated steel plates. Go hose off. You stink. I watched as Carolyn's clothes were draped over the metal walls of the shower stall. Her tight black leggings particularly caught my eye. What are you staring at? Her. Murphy smacked me upside the head and yanked me by the arm. Come with me. I need your help. Reluctantly, I let her drag me inside the warehouse, which turned out to be nothing like what I'd expected. Organized shelves, stocked to the brim with neatly categorized and labeled parts, filled the space. Pretty sweet, huh? Murphy gave me a proud grin before hefting a stack of pre-cut steel pieces. Move these out to the vehicle for me while I grab my tools. All right, it's Murphy's showtime. She put on her goggles, and the acetylene torch in her hands sparked wildly, making her look like a crazed battlefield engineer. Jane, here's your soap. I tapped on the iron bathroom door with the bar of soap I'd found near the sink. The door cracked open slightly, and a slender, pale hand reached out. What's going on out there? I thought I heard cutting noises. Her muffled voice floated out over the sound of running water. Murphy's armoring the windows of the truck. I leaned against the sheet metal wall and yelled over to Murphy in the distance. And she's building herself a throne while she's at it. By the time Caroline came out, her damp hair was plastered to her cheeks. Without makeup, a sprinkle of freckles dotted her face, making her look even more charming than before. You're up next. You smell like blood. It's awful. Murphy didn't even glance up as she barked orders in my direction. As soon as I stepped into the bathroom, Murphy immediately sidled up to Caroline, jabbing an elbow into her ribs with a mischievous smirk. Did you see the way he looked at you earlier? Come on, let's mess with him a bit. Don't. What? He can ogle us, but we can't mess back. Nah, let's rattle him a little. Murphy slid her somewhat useless goggles further up her nose, grabbed a half-protesting, half-amused Caroline by the arm, and started toward the bathroom. In the chaos, Murphy slipped, yelping as she and Caroline collided headfirst into the flimsy iron bathroom door. Bang! The door fell flat. I stood there, frozen, stark naked with one hand supporting the barely hanging wall. Caroline sprawled out at my feet on the floor, wide-eyed, staring up at me. Eowah! I shrieked, frantically trying to cover myself, failing miserably in the process. Not bad. Decent build, Murphy quipped, pulling off her goggles with a self-satisfied nod, like some kind of judge. Caroline's face turned a deep shade of crimson. Scrambling to her knees, she bolted toward a pile of supplies, clutching her knees and gasping for air like she might just combust on the spot. What the hell are you guys doing? I choked out, still holding up the flimsy little wall with what shred of dignity I had left. Oh, come on, like it's the end of the world, Murphy snorted, waving me off as if she hadn't just caused said humiliation. Finish your shower, then come help. Chop chop. Wounded in pride more than body, I finished washing up in record time, throwing on a set of desert combat gear that Caroline wordlessly handed me. Finally back to some semblance of dignity, I stood together with her at a safe distance, watching Murphy hammer away on the truck. About an hour later, Murphy jumped down from the truck and threw her arms wide like a magician unveiling their grand trick. Behold my masterpiece. Every window of the truck was now lined with centimeter-thick, slatted iron armor, designed to swing outward if needed. She'd even replaced the original glass with some sort of bulletproof, one-way panels she must have pilfered from God knows where. Sturdy, huh? Murphy smugly shouted, banging on the reinforced armor with a wrench to demonstrate. Those mutts could come charging, and nothing's getting through now. Satisfied with her handiwork, she stretched deeply before turning to Caroline with a sly smirk. Right, I'm off to shower. Keep an eye on your man. Make sure he doesn't sneak a peek at me this time. With that, she hefted the once-toppled iron door back into place, tossing her clothes onto it piece by piece as she walked. The last item to land, dangling over the door like a flag, was an oversized black bra. Caroline instinctively glanced down at herself. The tiny warehouse in the middle of the desert had become our temporary refuge. Freshly scrubbed, Murphy emerged moments later with wet curls casually tied back into a lopsided bun. She strutted out shirtless, wearing nothing but a pair of suspenders and pants. Caroline, in the midst of scrubbing down the detached truck seats, turned around at the sight and immediately flushed deep red. Would you please put on a goddamn bra? Murphy blinked, glanced down at the offending body parts, and then, without an ounce of shame or modesty, retorted, You're not wearing one either, so what's the problem? That's different. Caroline spluttered, marching over to grab the discarded black bra off the metal rack. Before Murphy could protest, Caroline shoved it into her hands, physically nudging the bespectacled engineer back into the makeshift changing area. A few muttered complaints later, Murphy returned in a plain t-shirt, notably more clothed this time. She gave Caroline an exaggerated roll of her eyes as they walked back over to me. By now, I was leaning against the driver's side of the truck, tapping my knuckles rhythmically against the new bulletproof windows and savoring that unparalleled sense of security. Well, pretty impressive, huh? Murphy asked, throwing open the truck's side door dramatically, only for a cascade of unsecured boxes to come spilling out, knocking her off balance. Are you kidding me? What if that had landed on me? She fumed, hastily shoving cargo back into its place. In the end, we spent the better part of an hour securing everything with a sturdy cargo net. Murphy plopped her hands on her hips, grinning cheekily as she turned to me. So, Captain, she chirped, tilting her head playfully. What's the plan now? I glanced up at the sky, heavy with threatening storm clouds. Rest up tonight. Tomorrow, we'll skirt around the northern barbed wire, head to Bayard to restock, and then head west all the way back to California. As night fell, we lit a small campfire next to the truck. I tossed a couple of packs of instant noodles into Murphy's metal mess kit, boiling them over the fire. Carolyn sat atop the roof of the truck, cradling her rifle, keeping watch. Tastes good, just not spicy enough. Murphy puffed on the steaming noodles, cheeks full like a chipmunk. I chuckled, scooping a spoonful of chili oil from a jar and adding it to her bowl. She took a bite, and her eyes lit up instantly. That's it. Tastes just like the diner in town. But as soon as the words slipped out, a quiet melancholy fell over her. Her smile vanished, and tears welled up in her eyes. She drained the bowl of broth, wiped her eyes, and muttered softly. Hurley was such a small town, but everyone there was good, well, except for that sleazy diner owner. Standing up, she dusted the sand off her jeans and tried to lighten the mood. Guess they're either in heaven or down in hell now. Meanwhile, I'm still trudging through this mess on Earth. Maybe they're lucky after all. They won't ever have to eat this crappy excuse for food. She climbed up to the roof of the truck and gave Carolyn a light pat on the back. Your turn. Grab some food while it's still warm. Hand me your weapon. She peered down. Carolyn pulled a hunting rifle out from inside the truck and handed it up to her. You know how to use it? Where I'm from, even an 8-year-old knows how to shoot. Murphy smirked as she grasped the gun confidently. As the temperature plummeted, thick fog rolled across the desert. We doused the campfire and holed up inside our modified truck. That night, it was eerily quiet. No zombies, no zombie dogs, and not a single sign of that fearsome black shadow we'd grown to dread. The next morning, we chewed on stale bread as we prepared to hit the road again. Carolyn turned on the radio. After a static screech, a calm, deep voice announced, "An unidentified, fast-spreading disease has been reported in southwestern New Mexico. CDC experts are on-site investigating. Residents in the area are advised to limit unnecessary travel." Zombies. The outbreak was spreading. "We should stick to paved roads," Murphy suggested. "Your truck's overloaded with all these mods. If we keep pushing through desert terrain, we're bound to get stranded." I nodded, steering the truck onto the asphalt. "Signal's back," Carolyn exclaimed, plugging my phone into the charger. I unlocked it and passed it to her to help look up news. Soon, she stumbled across something, anything but censored. On mainstream American social media platforms, conversations about the disease were heavily controlled. Authentic images or videos. Nearly impossible to find. "Wait, here's something." Carolyn quickly switched to an old, rarely used app from the East. Her face paled. "Oh my God." She pushed the phone towards us. Murphy and I leaned in. The screen was flooded with uncensored, raw, horrific clips. A street cam captured a person tearing into another in the middle of Walsenburg streets. Another video from a car dash cam showed a twisted figure sprinting on all fours down the road, inhumanly fast. And a doorbell camera? It caught a man being dragged from his own lawn by what used to be his neighbor, but was now a monster. The comments section was full of English speakers, frantically sharing raw footage and exposing truths on this unregulated global platform. "The outbreak. It's really happening," Murphy stammered, her voice shaking. Are they going to wipe out infected towns like they did with Hurley?" "They might have been able to pass off Hurley as some natural gas explosion," I muttered, keeping my eyes on the road ahead. "But cover stories won't hold up if it keeps spreading." Just then, traffic ahead turned chaotic. "Wait, something's wrong." Cars, every type you could imagine, were speeding and swerving, honking and screeching right toward us. Drivers were screaming, windows rolled down in terror. I yanked the truck onto the shoulder, narrowly avoiding a head-on collision. A sheriff's cruiser screeched to a halt beside us, gravel spraying everywhere. A sweat-soaked sheriff rolled down his window, yelling desperately, "Don't go north. It's gone to hell. 2 towns north of here are completely overrun. Head south. Take I-25. The state's ordered everyone evacuate immediately." And with that, he merged back into the frantic stampede of fleeing vehicles. "What do we do?" Murphy panicked, voice trembling. I clenched my jaw, spun the wheel, and turned us around in the sand. "We follow the crowd. Stick close. But no one gets out of this truck." Meanwhile, at Kirtland Air Force Base in New Mexico, inside the cargo hold of a C-17 Globemaster III, the air was thick with the smells of jet fuel and sweat. First Lieutenant Cross sat in the passenger seat of a Humvee, watching as scores of airborne infantry filed onto the aircraft in orderly silence. On his PDA, a tactical map glowed faintly. A glaring red dot sat just outside Hurley, to be deployed on homeland soil. "Asset retrieval mission," muttered a corporal chewing gum nearby. "Boss, this isn't a common gig." Cross stayed silent, his eyes scanning the horizon. The mission briefing had been explicit: extract a special target from within a group described as highly violent. No name, no photo, only a cold code name. He'd pulled plenty of black ops in his time, but the scale of this one made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. An entire airborne battalion and the National Guard, just to find one person? The Humvee was secured to a large airdrop pallet. Inside the massive C-17, the aircraft began its climb as Cross and his 4-man team checked their gear for the final time. When you get within a 10-kilometer radius of the target, your PDA will receive a real-time signal pinpointing their location. His commander's words echoed in his head. The plane began its descent. A mechanical whine filled the fuselage as the huge rear bay door slowly opened. A roaring wind blasted through the cabin. "Prepare for drop." The heavy pallet slid to the edge, then violently detached from the aircraft, carrying the Humvee down into the wilderness below. Cross stood, motioned to his team, and barked, "Move to the objective," before throwing himself out of the airplane into the night sky. Roy stumbled through the desert, clutching an expensive leather briefcase and wearing a wrinkled, high-end tailored suit. He had screwed up badly, catastrophically. As head of Section 3 within Meyer Biotech's research division, he'd been assigned to escort a busload of goods to the U.S.-Mexico border, a trade-off to a Juarez cartel boss known as Big Gold. The bus had carried 40 black men, subjects injected with the zombie fungus, though still dormant. The zombie fungus was Meyer's golden goose, a breakthrough bioweapon capable of transforming hosts into ferocious, blood-craving creatures driven only by the urge to spread infection. Roy's team, their mission was to make these walking nightmares controllable. Their creation had a single fatal weakness, a carefully engineered one. They were photophobic. In the absence of blood or sound stimuli, these zombies instinctively recoiled into darkness and silence. This was supposed to be a textbook field test, and Roy's golden ticket to shipping his family off to Northern Europe to enjoy 10 lifetimes of luxury. But it all unraveled in Helly, some two-bit backwater town, because of one dumb, horny redneck. To this day, he couldn't fathom it. How had things spiraled into chaos during the time it took to grab a taco? When the panicked report from the bus driver crackled into his earpiece, Roy acted swiftly. He ordered the elimination of the infected redneck and attempted to neutralize the good that had been prematurely activated. Simultaneously, he triggered the signal jammer, cutting off Helly from communication with the outside world to buy himself time. He thought he had the situation under control, but then a sudden, thick fog rolled in, and with it, everything fell apart. The bus swerved out of control as screams and the horrifying sounds of mauling emerged from his earpiece. That's when the Lincoln Navigator transporting him and his team was struck by a panicked vehicle fleeing the town. In the chaos, while two of his subordinates begged for his help, Roy watched through the mist as familiar, grotesque figures emerged. He abandoned them, running solo into the mist with only his PDA, containing incriminating evidence, and a satellite phone. The phone rang soon after. It was corporate, his superiors. "Helly is no longer your concern," the frosty voice on the other end said. "As for you, remember our agreement. If your vitals are still on our monitoring system in 24 hours, your family's fate will be sealed." Roy collapsed into the desert sand, helplessly listening to the distant roar of A-10 warthogs and the chopping blades of Apache helicopters obliterating Helly in a maelstrom of explosions and fire. His choice was clear. There wasn't one. When the phone buzzed again, his voice, hoarse, almost as if it were no longer human, croaked, "Leave them alone. Take the shot, and I can guarantee it." "Fine." From the briefcase, Roy pulled out a metallic injector, laughing bitterly, tears streaming down his face. He jammed the needle hard into his thigh. Under the moonlight, a gaunt figure rose atop a sand dune. Bones splintered audibly as they stretched unnaturally, warping and mutating. Flesh tore as unervingly long. Clawed fingers burst through like blades, clawing at a mercilessly cold night sky. A silver van blended seamlessly into the stream of evacuees fleeing Helly. On the horizon, black smoke clawed its way up from the ruined town, a scar that refused to heal. Ahead, an endless line of barbed wire and heavily armed soldiers loomed, bringing the convoy to a halt. "It's Texas National Guard," Caroline whispered, peering through her rifle's scope, keeping her breathing quiet. "The Lone Star badge, and tanks and armored vehicles." This blockade was far more formidable and cold-blooded than the one we had encountered before. As we hesitated, chaos erupted behind us. Cars were going berserk, pedals floored, engines roaring, racing toward the barbed wire and the armed soldiers as if their drivers had lost all regard for life. "Are they out of their minds?" Murphy exclaimed. "No," I said, eyes glued to the rearview mirror as I slammed the truck into gear. "Unless there's something even worse than the checkpoint chasing them." The entire checkpoint descended into madness. Vehicles collided with the barbed wire, the grating sound of metal twisting piercing the air. The National Guard opened fire, but their bullets couldn't hold back the steel tsunami driven by sheer terror. Before long, holes began appearing in the barriers. "We're going through too." I turned the truck toward a weaker section of the fortified defense line and floored the accelerator. "Dogs! The dogs are coming!" Caroline's scream echoed in the cabin. I glanced in the rearview mirror and froze. Dozens of dark shadows were rapidly closing in on us. The way they moved, the deadly speed with which they stalked their prey, they were zombie dogs. Hold on tight. I stomped on the gas pedal. The horde of zombie dogs was like a black tide, instantly overwhelming the rearmost vehicles. One of the dogs leapt high, smashing through the rear windshield of a sedan and into its cabin. The car spun out of control, flipping violently off the road. More vehicles were overturned and exploded under the relentless attacks. People who were thrown from their cars were torn apart mid-air by the savage beasts. I clenched my teeth and bolted through one of the gaps in the broken barricade. Behind us was a full-blown hellscape. The National Guard finally turned their focus to the terrifying creatures attacking them, but it was already too late. Dozens of zombie dogs broke through the defensive line, using speed and sheer ferocity. Soldiers bitten by the beasts transformed within seconds, adding to the chaotic nightmare. The tanks and armored vehicles reformed their formation, machine guns spitting fire in a desperate bid to construct a wall of death. But the zombie dogs, fearless and unrelenting, climbed over their fallen comrades' bodies to rip the defensive line apart. And then came the flood. A massive wave of zombies surged forward, drowning the entire checkpoint in carnage. An M1117 armored vehicle was flipped during the chaos, while a tank's tracks were jammed by the piling corpses, trapping it in place. "They're done for," I muttered, staring in horror at the massacre unfolding in the side mirror. Our silver truck roared forward down the highway, temporarily leaving the chaos and most of the other vehicles in the dust. But then Caroline's trembling voice shattered any momentary relief. "They're catching up." Along the highway, more cars were grinding to a halt as they got stuck in the sand. From their windows, people shouted, waved desperately, pleading for help. I ignored them, foot planted firmly on the gas. I drove the silver truck mercilessly, leaving the desperate souls and the shadow of death following them far behind. You don't have to outrun the tiger. You just have to outrun the person next to you. "Captain, something's wrong with the engine noise," Murphy suddenly shouted. Despite tightly gripping the railings for stability, her sharp ears had picked up the issue. "We're kicking up too much sand. It's going into the engine. Stop now, or the whole thing's gonna blow." I slammed the brakes, the truck skidding into a long arc across the sandy terrain. Like a nimble monkey, Murphy leapt over Caroline and out of the truck. Pop the hood. Underneath the scorching hot hood was a mess of dust and sand. Grimacing against the heat, she grabbed a piece of cardboard and frantically fanned the area. Nearby, vehicles continued to rush past us, kicking up more clouds of sand that made Murphy spit in growing irritation. "Give me something to block the grill," she hollered at me as I stood guard, gun in hand. "Backpacks. Use your battle gear," Caroline shouted, jumping down to assist. I tore up a couple of t-shirts and stuffed them into the gaps of the grill under Murphy's direction. "The dogs are here. Get back in the truck." Caroline's shriek was blood-curdling. Not far away, several zombie dogs were sprinting toward us with terrifying speed. Just as I jumped back into the truck, reaching to pull Murphy in, a shadow lunged at her from the side. "Murphy!" My mind went blank, a deafening noise reverberating through my skull. Pinned to the ground, Murphy was using a backpack to fend off the bloodthirsty jaws of the zombie dog. Grabbing my shotgun, I leapt down, summoning every ounce of strength I had to swing the butt of the gun like a baseball bat into the creature's head. Thwack! The beast let out a wretched howl, tumbling several feet away. I yanked a stunned Murphy to her feet, stepping in front of her as I pressed the barrel against the creature's skull. Without hesitation, I pulled the trigger. XP plus 20. Another zombie dog leapt up from the sand, lunging directly toward us. But midair, its head exploded in a bloody spray. It was Caroline. "Lorraine." I shoved Murphy into the truck while alternating cover fire with Caroline, unloading everything we had to blow the remaining zombie dogs into pieces. "Go." The moment the door slammed shut, a notification popped up in front of me. "Vehicle upgrade, LV5, 5/540. Please choose an upgrade reward. 1. Customizable vehicle exterior. 2. Increase overall size of vehicle by 20%. 3. Add reinforced battering ram." Without overthinking, I picked 3, then slammed on the gas pedal. The truck roared to life and shot forward at full throttle. "Thanks back there, Murphy," Out of breath and clearly still shaken, slumped into the seat. I heaved a deep breath, turning to Caroline as we both said in unison, "And thank you." Murphy grinned, revealing a set of white teeth. "Looks like we're all in the same boat now." I raised an eyebrow and replied in Mandarin, more like grasshoppers tied to the same rope. Central Town, Northern Sector. Lieutenant Cross and his four-man squad stood next to the Humvee, inspecting the vehicle. Not far off, an entire company of paratroopers were sorting their gear, while 3 Apaches hovered low in the sky above. This setup. Are we headed into an actual war zone? The driver asked while lighting a cigarette. Cross didn't answer. His only mission was to cross through 2 towns overrun by high-aggression hostiles and locate the target known only by the codename Jenny. Soon, gunfire and explosions echoed from the heart of Central Town. "Move out." Cross checked his watch before giving the order. The Humvee roared as it started down the road carved out by the paratroopers' blood, sweat, and a hail of bullets. On either side were mangled corpses with wounds that looked like they'd been torn open by wild beasts. At the southern edge of the town, the paratrooper commander handed Cross a grim warning. Bayard Town's situation could be even worse. "We'll stay and clean up this mess. Good luck." With that, the Humvee sped southward. Cross's PDA buzzed, displaying the target's detailed profile. Target name: Caroline Jane. Height: 1.70 meters. Physical features: short blonde hair, light blue irises. Classification: top secret. Last known location: inside a silver truck. We had finally shaken off our pursuers and arrived at the next town, Roseburg. One of the Apaches that had been trailing us from a distance veered away only after confirming we had entered the town. It was following us, Caroline said with certainty. The people of Roseburg were visibly frantic, rushing around with panic plastered on their faces. The shelves of supermarkets and pharmacies had already been picked almost clean. Amidst the chaos, we scored some much-needed ammo and supplies during an impromptu $0 purchase spree at a gun shop. I even caught Caroline snatching 2 boxes of shotgun shells straight out of a stocky redneck's hands. The man cursed at her as she and Murphy ran back to the truck laughing. "I warned them there was danger coming," Caroline said in frustration, "but they all called me crazy." Suddenly, the emergency broadcast coming through on our radio froze the air in the truck. The state of New Mexico is enacting an immediate lockdown of all border crossings. Residents are strictly prohibited from leaving or entering the state. The entire state locked down? Murphy's face turned pale. If the infection has spread to the major cities up north. Her grim prediction came true all too quickly. Just as we escaped a checkpoint, a towering 3-meter-tall shadow emerged in Central Town. It was Roy, now transformed into something monstrous, accompanied by a horde of even more terrifying mutated zombies. With a single screech, it incapacitated the entire paratrooper team. With the last flicker of consciousness, the paratrooper commander saw the shadow tear a multi-ton armored vehicle apart like it was paper. Then, it ominously extended one long, sinewy arm, pointing north. In response, hordes of zombies lurking in buildings began swarming out like ants receiving orders, their howls merging into an unstoppable tidal wave of shadow and death, consuming everything in its path as they surged onward, northward. "We need to get out of the city now," I shouted, jerking the wheel to avoid a pickup going the wrong way. "Murphy, find us an alternate route, one that's empty and heads north." In the back, Murphy struggled with a map pinned under a pile of toppled cans and supply packs from an abrupt stop. "The entire southwest is desert, but if we're heading north, we could follow the dried-out Gila riverbed. This truck's too cramped. It won't work as is," I said, glancing at the chaos in my rearview mirror and making up my mind. "I need to upgrade the vehicle." Caroline raised an eyebrow as her eyes sparkled with intrigue. God glanced subtly toward the back seat where Murphy sat, shooting me a questioning look. Murphy's reputation among us was already trustworthy. She was one of our own. "I'm going to use my ability," I confessed. "This time, there are 3 upgrade options. Customize the vehicle's appearance, add a battering ram, or increase the overall size by 20%. "What?" Murphy pushed aside a backpack that was squashing her, blinking her big wide eyes. "You too are messing with me, right?" Caroline eyed the boxes that had already piled into the cab, then nodded at me. "I trust you." Let's upgrade now. Hey, you can't be serious. Murphy ruffled her messy curls, utterly baffled. I only share this secret with my people, I said, looking at her with an unwavering expression of seriousness. What am I, a 3-year-old? Murphy puffed out her cheeks, but before she could continue her rant, her jaw suddenly dropped open so wide it looked like it might unhinge. An ethereal blue light, like an invisible waterfall, rushed over the entire van in an instant. Streams of data lines zipped across the vehicle's surface, weaving together a translucent blue cube that enveloped all of us, humans and cargo included. As Murphy stared in shock, the interior walls of the van began visibly shifting backward. The once cramped cargo was no longer crowded, and her little seat expanded to match its new proportions. When the glow faded, the Chevrolet Express was reborn. The body looked sleeker and more solid, the tires noticeably larger, like a hulking metal beast ready to pounce. And that concludes. Caroline reached out and gently pushed Murphy's jaw closed. Goo's magic power showcase. Ignoring the girl, who was now stammering and pointing wildly at the newly upgraded vehicle, I slammed the gas pedal, nudging aside a blocking sedan as we barreled out of the chaotic city. After catching her breath, it seemed Murphy had embraced her newly expanded worldview. She eagerly began reorganizing the now roomy cargo hold, picking up a blue metal ammo case filled with rifle rounds and inspecting one of them curiously. Why? Is the bullet tip blue? Caroline had a calm explanation at the ready, briefing her on how the vehicle came with integrated weapon systems and a recharge feature that magically replenished 100 rounds daily. System exploit alert. Murphy caught on immediately, scrambling to grab a pair of pliers. So, we just take the bullets out each day, and tomorrow it generates 100 more. Infinite ammo cheat. Caroline raised an eyebrow, pulling an empty cartridge shell from the glove compartment. We've thought of that. The system only refills to a max of 100 rounds, not beyond that. Fine. Murphy relented, fiddling with a bullet as she pried it open with the pliers. She emptied the pale blue powdery propellant inside onto a piece of paper and gave it a curious sniff. Still, if it's free, we may as well use it. Waste not, want not. With relentless efficiency, she swapped out all the standard bullets in Caroline's rifle magazine for the special blue-tipped rounds, grumbling to herself about extravagance the whole time. Caroline and I exchanged dry smiles. We'd been so preoccupied with staying alive lately, we hadn't even considered that angle ourselves. Finally, out of immediate danger, we found a secluded hillside in the wilderness to pause and reorganize our supplies. With the expanded van interior, we managed to stack cargo neatly along both sides, clearing a pathway down the middle. Donning tactical vests we'd borrowed from a gun store earlier, we suddenly noticed something odd. Murphy, who's normally a chatterbox, was crouched at a distance, focused on what looked like some sort of mysterious ritual. Curious, Caroline and I wandered over. Got a lighter? Murphy asked without looking up. I handed her a Zippo. Carefully, she bundled some of the pale blue powder in a napkin and lit the wick. You might want to back up. Reflexively, we both took a few cautious steps away. I do this all the SSSSSH, boom. A searing cobalt flame erupted in startling silence. Blazing with such intensity, it was like a tiny blue sun detonating in an instant. The dazzling light burned fiercely for less than a second before vanishing as if it had never existed. Murphy was so startled by the sudden burst of brilliance that she fell back flat on her butt. Clumsily, she patted her hair, finding singed strands and grimacing at a faint burnt protein smell. Wow. Far from frightened, she pressed her face close to the charred residue, inspecting it with awe. Virtually no ash left. Ridiculously clean burn. The energy density on this stuff is insane. I could totally turn this into a bomb. Later, during dinner, Murphy inhaled her canned meat rations in record time and commandeered an empty tin. Opening 6 or 7 more blue-tipped bullets, she began industriously piecing together her new project with a delighted grin. Meanwhile, Caroline and I sat quietly by the campfire, watching as the sunset brushed the wilderness in warm hues of orange and gold. The udon from that place near campus was always so good, Caroline said wistfully, stirring the bubbling noodles in the pot. I miss it sometimes. Too bad it's. In this kind of situation, meeting you, I stirred the dough lightly. Otherwise, I might have had the chance to let you try my cooking. You know, There's a saying back where I'm from. Every international student, no matter their major, eventually becomes a great chef. She chuckled at my joke, her golden short hair catching the twilight glow. The food here isn't that bad, is it? It's not bad, I said, gazing into her eyes, but it doesn't taste like home. She hugged her knees, resting her chin on top, her eyes quietly fixed on the setting sun. Do you think, if this crisis hadn't happened, would we have met? Her question stirred something deep within me. I'm just a delivery driver, I said softly. Probably would have never stepped foot into your world in my entire life. Not necessarily, she said with a distant look, nudging me gently with her shoulder. I've always had this feeling that we were meant to meet, one way or another. By the time darkness began to fall, Murphy came running back excitedly, clutching a can tightly wrapped in duct tape and bandages. She had crafted a makeshift pull-string fuse using a spring from a ballpoint pen, a flint, and a sprinkle of magnesium powder. Get down. She tied a long string to the fuse and bolted back to where we were hiding. Fire in the hole. She yanked the string with a sharp pull. Instead of a deafening boom, there was a piercing, ear-splitting crack. A tightly compressed blue sphere of energy detonated, sending a shockwave rippling outward in a terrifying wave. It swept sand and gravel like an invisible wall straight into the side of the truck we were behind, causing it to rattle with sharp clatters. At ground zero of the explosion, the sand had been flash-heated and fused, leaving behind a patch of glassy, otherworldly terrain that shimmered eerily under the dim light. Yeehaw! Murphy ran toward the glassy ground, squealing with joy, throwing her arms in the air. I need to make more of these. Caroline and I exchanged a glance, the shock and concern in her eyes mirroring mine. This wasn't just a makeshift explosive anymore. This was a high-yield bomb we were dealing with. We have to test what these bullets can really do, I muttered firmly, making a decision. Caroline nodded solemnly, snapping an extended mag loaded with the glowing blue bullets into her rifle with a satisfying click. She took a deep breath, bracing the stock against her shoulder, and aimed at a distant boulder. Bang! The rifle barked sharply. A vivid blue beam erupted from the barrel like a laser, streaking through the twilight with precision, carving a straight, deadly path. Caroline winced, rubbing her right shoulder, her face a mask of surprise. The recoil. Holy hell, that recoil. Again. Let's do it again. Murphy was nearly bouncing on her toes with excitement. Caroline handed me the rifle. Before I could secure it properly, Murphy snatched it from my hands. My turn. She mimicked Caroline's posture, pressing the stock firmly into her shoulder and aiming toward the sand nearby. Wait. Caroline's face paled as she suddenly remembered something. I modified the fire selector, shortened the trigger travel. Her warning came a breath too late. Murphy's fingers squeezed the trigger. The burst of light and sound was instantaneous and ferocious. The AR-15 didn't issue a single controlled fire, but instead unleashed a violent roar. Bang, 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 bang. A rapid series of blinding blue fireballs erupted from the barrel, streaking through the night like tracer rounds. They rebounded, scattered, and crisscrossed, creating a deadly light show in the sand. The immense recoil overwhelmed Murphy, causing her to stagger back several steps, nearly toppling over. Ow! My shoulder, she yelped, wincing as she shoved the rifle back into my hands, swearing never to use it again. To test the destructive power, we set up a makeshift target, a tin can filled with sand. The results left us speechless. The bullet punctured a neat little hole in the front of the can, but the back end, along with the sand inside, had been utterly obliterated, vaporized into nothingness. Murphy poked at the tiny entry hole with her finger, discovering that some of the sand inside had fused into black, glassy crystallized structures from the extreme heat. We're talking temperatures exceeding 1,800 degrees Celsius, Caroline murmured to herself, inspecting the crystallized remains. This isn't just ammunition. This is some kind of directed energy weapon. And you two haven't been using this incredible stuff. Murphy shot us both a look of incredulity and disdain. It was at that moment that Caroline and I fully realized the kind of gift the system had been delivering to us daily. So, can I work on more explosives now? Murphy's eyes sparkled with curiosity and mischief as she looked at me. Go ahead, I nodded with a serious tone. But only make the incomplete components. No fuses, no finished devices. The power of these things, it's way beyond what we anticipated. Nightfall finally settled in. The excitement began to fade, replaced by a somber quiet. Murphy rummaged through Caroline's bag, pulling out a pair of binoculars before climbing up onto the roof of the truck, staying on high alert as she gazed out into the vast, dark void around us, scanning the surroundings. Suddenly, her voice came from the rooftop, trembling slightly. Roseburg has fallen. The city, it's all on fire. Carolyn and I both felt our hearts drop at the same moment. We've got to move, keep heading north. I started the truck without hesitation. Static crackled as Carolyn flipped through radio channels until she finally caught a faint, fragmented broadcast. Zombie outbreaks reported across most of New Mexico. CDC has failed. The National Guard is in full retreat. Warning: do not trust the advancing federal forces. I repeat, do not trust the federal forces. They're not here to save you. There's a survivor outpost, Murphy said, peering over her map. Should we go? I shook my head. Listen to me, I said, locking eyes with both of them, my tone more serious than it had ever been. Surviving the apocalypse happens in 3 phases. Phase 1, the early days of the crisis. People still try to help each other because they have hope. They believe rescue is coming. But when the supplies run out, hope turns into despair. Phase 2, the collapse of authority. When people realize the government can no longer protect them, laws and morality turn to ash. Violence becomes the only currency for survival. Those so-called survivor camps? They'll either turn into sweatshops under some dictator or fall into the hands of maniacs and cults. Phase 3, total breakdown of trust. Humanity will be fighting zombies, a hostile environment, and each other. That's when true hell begins. So here's the plan. We use what resources we have to survive on our own for a month. We ride out the chaos of Phase 1. Only after that will we reassess. Carolyn and Murphy sat in silence for a long moment. What happened in Helly convinced me. You're right, Carolyn finally said, her expression conflicted. I want to see what this world is turning into with my own eyes. There's just one problem. I pointed to the fuel gauge. We're down to less than half a tank. Meanwhile, in Roseburg, Lieutenant Cross's Humvee barreled through the fiery streets like an iron beast. What the hell is that thing behind us? He barked, cigarette clamped between his teeth, shouting at the gunner stationed above. Following behind them was a monstrous figure, over 2 meters tall, with bulging muscles that had torn through its skin, leaving exposed raw flesh dripping with blood. Bullets peppered its body, but they only slowed it briefly, causing droplets of blood to spray. No real damage. Grenades. Hit it with grenades. A 40mm grenade launcher fired, the round slamming dead center into the creature's chest. The explosion lit up the street, leaving a massive hole where its torso used to be. But the beast barely staggered before resuming its relentless pursuit, its crimson eyes locked onto the Humvee. Back in our truck, Murphy marked something on her map, an old town named Tylon, just west of Helly. Helly was ground zero, and it got bombed to hell afterward, she explained. Tylon's so close to the outbreak, it was probably hit right away. Either the people fled, or they're gone. Odds are, it's a ghost town with only a few stragglers wandering around. We might find fuel there. It was high risk, but her logic was sound. We drove through the night and reached the outskirts of Tylon the next morning. From the sand dunes, the town looked eerily still under the sun, as silent as a graveyard. We drove in slowly, honking the horn. The sharp sound echoed through the deserted streets, but nothing stirred. No zombies. No survivors. Nothing. The small gas station at the town entrance still had fuel. The shelves in the convenience store were stocked like the residents had just vanished into thin air. Time, it seemed, had been frozen here. This place was hit hard and fast, Carolyn said, gun in hand as she and Murphy sprinted into the store to activate the fuel pump. They didn't even get a chance to react. I jammed the nozzle into the truck's fuel tank. The icy flow of gasoline gushed into the vehicle. The girls worked like ants in an assembly line, hauling cans, medical supplies, and toiletries from the store into the truck with lightning speed. We were almost done. The gas nozzle clicked with a sharp ka-chunk as the tank reached max capacity. And then it happened. A piercing, otherworldly screech shattered the deathly silence of Tylon, coming from deep within the town. I snapped the gas cap shut and looked up. Far down the main street, Emerging from the shadows of a decaying building was a tall, blood-red figure. It moved with a predatory slowness, each step deliberate. That inhuman shriek, the sound of a blade gouging through the stillness, shredded the calm. Frantically, I waved at the girls still in the store. They bolted toward the truck, clutching the last load of supplies, practically tripping over themselves as they clambered inside. Just as I slammed the door shut, my eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. There I saw. The anger was nearly boiling over. How much intel has HQ been keeping from us? Complaining won't help, Lieutenant, came a steady voice through the PDA. Your duty is to complete the mission. Focus. Lieutenant Cross forced himself to swallow his fury, taking a deep breath. He glanced back at his team in the vehicle, their exhaustion etched across their faces. Every one of them radiated fear and tension. No one spoke, but Cross could tell that their confidence had taken a critical hit. He tightened his grip on the steering wheel. Listen up, team. This isn't the first time we've faced impossible odds, and it won't be the last. But we always find a way through, right? So straighten up. We still have a job to do. Yes, sir. Despite the fatigue, his team responded in unison, their voices full of determination. The Humvee roared down a war-torn road, the devastation of battle all around them. As the shattered buildings thinned out, the map on their tablet showed they were closing in on the coordinates of the airdrop. The target's current route has been marked, a soldier in the passenger seat said, studying the electronic map. It's moving toward the city center. If we don't take it down before it completely spirals out of control, we're looking at a catastrophe. Lieutenant Cross gave a sharp nod. His gaze shifted to the window, though his mind was still haunted by the image of the horrifying creature feasting on others of its kind. This thing defied everything they knew about zombies. It was a mutated monster born of some scientific experiment gone horribly wrong. Unpredictable. Unstoppable. The convoy soon reached a spot near the airdrop zone and came to a screeching halt. Soldiers piled out of their vehicles, immediately securing the area and clearing nearby threats as they prepared to recover the supply drop. A familiar rumble echoed overhead as the aircraft approached. Seconds later, a massive supply crate descended from the sky, crashing to the ground with a powerful shockwave. The team wasted no time opening the crate, and when they saw the contents, everyone froze. Inside was a colossal antimatter ion cannon, paired with several crates of high-energy capacitors. Eyes widened across the group. This was no ordinary equipment. This weapon had never been deployed in the field before. HQ definitely knows something we don't, Cross muttered under his breath. They wouldn't send us this thing otherwise. Lieutenant, we can't power this thing up on our own, their engineer said as he hurriedly inspected the equipment, worry etched into his face. It's going to need to be assembled and calibrated on site, and we'll need a serious energy source to fire it. How long will it take? Cross asked sharply. 10 minutes. Minimum. The lieutenant's jaw clenched as he scanned their surroundings. Every second counted. The enemy could descend on them at any moment, and the situation was becoming more dire by the minute. Listen up, he barked, his voice firm and resolute. We hold the line. Keep that thing off them and buy as much time as you can. No matter what happens, we don't stop until this weapon is ready. No one questioned him. They exchanged glances, silent but resolute. Determination burned in each set of eyes. From the distance, a low, thunderous sound echoed, heavy footsteps that shook the earth. Then it came into view. The massive zombie, cloaked in blood and soot, tore through the horizon once more. It was stronger now, but its purpose hadn't shifted. It was hunting them, their resistance infuriating its monstrous determination. It's here, Cross muttered, drawing his weapon from the holster on his belt. A wry smirk tugged at the corner of his mouth. Not today. He charged his weapon as the beast let out a bone-chilling roar, barreling toward them with murderous intent. Behind him, his team braced for the fight of their lives. They had no retreat. Only this moment. Cross raised his voice. Everyone, together. And they surged forward. Roar. There was a brief silence on the other end before a cold voice responded. Continue the mission. We stopped by the Sierra River to rest. Murphy cheered as she ran to the river to wash her face. Meanwhile, Carolyn and I worked on sorting out the accumulated food waste from the past few days. As dusk settled, a campfire crackled by the riverside. Using some of my remaining survival points, I allocated one to Carolyn's perception attribute. She suddenly gasped, as though pricked by a needle, nearly losing her balance. Special attribute activated for Carolyn Jane. Perception can predict incoming personal danger within a range of 130 meters. It seemed to work. The aroma of roasting fish began wafting through the air around the campfire. With practiced hands, I gutted the fish, removing its internal organs and scales. Carolyn watched from the side, looking slightly pale. She subconsciously turned her head away. "A gentleman keeps his distance from the kitchen," I teased with a laugh. "Didn't expect that saying to apply to you folks as well." "In our supermarkets, we don't see live animals," she defended herself as she kneeled down next to me, sounding irritated. "Slaughtering them straight away is too cruel." "Oh." I placed the skewered fish over the fire and looked at her. "Then where do the meat you eat come from? Do the livestock volunteer themselves into the slaughterhouse?" "We use electric stunning to ensure they're pain-free when they die," she replied matter-of-factly, blinking. "And what about the Native Americans whose scalps you ripped off? Do you think they were pain-free too?" I quipped without looking up. "That's different." Her cheeks flushed red with indignation. "Is it?" I locked eyes with her, the flickering firelight reflecting in my pupils. "Your prosperity was built on plundering the world. Now that you're at the top, you wield the banners of civilization and humanity, criticizing those who are simply trying to emulate and catch up with you. Don't you think that's hypocritical?" "You know it well," I said, deliberately enunciating each word. "America clawed its way to the throne that way. So now, you'll do whatever it takes to stop the rise of the next America." The weight of my words pierced her mind like invisible thorns. Carolyn opened her mouth but couldn't muster any retort that didn't sound hollow. I nudged her knee gently, my tone softening. "But we're different." Switching to my native tongue, I spoke each word slowly and clearly. "A noble person, when it comes to animals, cannot bear to see their living form, nor can they bear to hear their cries when they are killed. This is why they avoid the kitchen entirely." This was said by Mencius. Essentially, someone with empathy can't bear the sight of living creatures being killed or the sound of their cries. So, to avoid feeling distress, they keep away from the kitchen. It's an act of restraint born out of compassion, not a false display of morality. As I rotated the fish over the fire for even roasting, I glanced at her. "But Mencius also said, food and sex are the most basic human desires. Survival and reproduction are instincts of all living beings. We acknowledge these instincts while trying to maintain a sense of kindness. What about you? You consume more of the world's resources than anyone else, and then turn around to accuse others of not being eco-friendly. You've spilled more blood than anyone else and now lecture others about human rights." My words left Carolyn in deep contemplation. She was quiet for a long time. Patting her shoulder lightly, I softened my voice further. "But none of this is your fault. You've done nothing wrong. You just happen to grow up in a comfort zone that thrives off this system. If I could, I wish I could take you back to my homeland and show you." Carolyn playfully punched my arm, sniffled, and changed the subject. "The fish isn't ready yet." "Not even close?" I chuckled. "The real cooking show is about to begin." At that moment, Murphy's triumphant shout rang out from the riverbank. She came running toward us, soaking wet and clutching a massive trout over 1/2 meter long. The fish was still fiercely thrashing, its tail slapping her in the face, yet her smile was as radiant as ever. "See," I said to Carolyn with a grin. "That's what vitality looks like." The three of us gathered around the campfire, sharing the delicious roasted fish and a pot of hearty fish soup. The fatigue and gloom of the past few days seemed to dissolve in the warmth of the firelight and the savory aroma of the meal. "I'm going for a bath," declared Murphy, fully satisfied. She grabbed a bar of soap and a towel, singing a jaunty tune as she ran toward the river. "No peeking," Carolyn warned me sternly, jabbing 2 fingers in front of my eyes. Amused and exasperated, I obediently turned away. Suddenly, a sharp scream rang out from the river. Carolyn and I whipped around just in time to see, under the glow of the moonlight, a startled Murphy dashing out of the water stark naked. She flailed her arms wildly, panic etched on her face, and there, clinging to her thigh, was something fuzzy and alive. The black thing. She squeezed into the truck, screaming all the way, her cries turning into heart-wrenching wails from inside. "Help! Something's biting me." Caroline and I stared at each other in shock before rushing over. All we saw was a beaver, over 1 meter long, latched tightly onto Murphy's leg. Murphy's face had turned ghostly pale, tears streaming down her face like a waterfall. Once Caroline distracted the overly enthusiastic beaver with a piece of grilled fish, Murphy sat clutching her chest, still trembling. For a second there, I thought it was some kind of zombie lake monster. The absurdity of it all had the three of us laughing uncontrollably. But before the laughter could fully subside, the beaver paused mid-chew, suddenly alert. In a flash, it slipped into the river and vanished from sight. Murphy and I were still confused, but Caroline's expression changed instantly. "Get back!" Caroline yanked Murphy behind her, her voice trembling with urgency. "Wolves. There's a pack of wolves in the forest." Caroline's heightened awareness saved Murphy's life. A dark shadow lunged, narrowly missing where Murphy had been sitting moments earlier, retreating back into the shadows of the trees. Dozens of eyes glowing in eerie green stared at us menacingly from the darkness. "Get to the truck." I took up my shotgun, covering Caroline and Murphy as they made a break for the vehicle. Just as my foot was halfway into the truck, a wolf that had been lying in wait near the blind spot by the door lunged at me with ferocious speed. Its rancid, foul breath nearly knocked me out. In that split second, there wasn't time to think, let alone aim. Pure instinct took over as I gripped the shotgun with both hands and slammed the stock down with all the force I could muster. Crack! The nauseating sound of bone shattering filled the air as the wolf's skull crumpled under the force of the blow. Its limp body hit the ground with a resounding thud. I rolled into the car in a single motion, slamming the door shut behind me. "Your strength." Caroline and Murphy stared at me, shock written all over their faces. I looked at my hands, heart pounding wildly. The surge of power I experienced in that moment, so raw, so untamed, frightened even myself. After that bite from the zombie dog, I said uneasily, struggling to find the words. "I think I might be infected. Does this mean you'll turn into some kind of super mutant driver?" Murphy asked, her expression a mix of awe and excitement. To test the theory, we cautiously stepped out of the vehicle again. Using my shirt to shield my fist, I approached a cedar tree as thick as a grown man's thigh. Taking a deep breath, I twisted my hips and shoulders, launching a textbook-perfect straight punch. Boom! Chunks of wood exploded everywhere as the tree's trunk buckled. A gaping, pot-sized dent materialized where my fist had struck. That was from a punch. Murphy's voice quivered. I hadn't even begun to process what just happened when my arm moved on its own, this time throwing a hook punch. Crack! The tree, unable to take any more punishment, snapped. With an earth-shaking groan, it began to topple toward us. Reacting on pure adrenaline, I instinctively lunged forward, catching the falling tree, one-handed. Are you even human anymore?" Murphy stared at me like I was some kind of alien. Once we were back in the truck, the two girls poked and pressed at me from all angles, as though trying to study some rare creature. "At least you still feel pain," Murphy muttered with relief after delivering a particularly sharp pinch. I stared at my hands, trapped in a whirlwind of confusion and dread. Was this a result of the infection? Or had my body somehow adapted, blending the virus with some kind of system-driven regeneration? Or could it be something else entirely? As we debated back and forth, the conversation was cut short by a deafening roar that pierced the sky. Looking up through the windshield, we saw two long, luminous trails streaking through the night, cutting diagonally across the sky as they shot toward the east. "Are those fighter jets?" Murphy pressed her face against the window, muttering to herself. The pale contrails sliced the moonlit sky like scalpels, heading straight northeast. I turned on the radio. Between the static, the faint, fragmented voice of a survivor's broadcast crackled through. Survivors from central New Mexico report that Albuquerque has fallen. A new evolved form is controlling regular zombies. Its sound waves debilitate even the most well-equipped armies within a 5-kilometer radius. The fall of America is only a matter of time. Albuquerque, that's a city of over 600,000 people. Caroline's voice trembled. Murphy pulled out a map, locating the coordinates of a survivor camp mentioned on the broadcast. It seemed to be near a national reserve. "That's way too close to Albuquerque," I said, scanning the map with a deep frown. "Only about 100 kilometers away. Completely bypass its security system." Frustration set in as the mystery only deepened with this newfound device. They wanted us dead, but why? I muttered, my hands gripping the PDA tightly. Everything from their relentless pursuit to their lack of identification spelled trouble. Trouble we hadn't signed up for. This wasn't random, Caroline said, keeping her rifle close, her fiery determination flickering now as much as it ever did. They had orders. Someone sent them. They knew about us. Murphy lit a cigarette, pacing nervously around the wrecked Humvee. But that's what's bothering me. Why us? We're nobodies. Just another group of survivors trying to stay alive. What could they possibly want? This doesn't add up. Whatever their reason, I said grimly, it means someone out there is watching, tracking, hunting. And it's no coincidence these guys were military, or at least ex-military. These aren't run-of-the-mill scavengers trying to steal our supplies. Do we ditch the truck? Go back to hiding on foot? Murphy asked, exhaling smoke as his gaze darted toward the horizon, visibly itching for an answer. I shook my head. Too risky. If they're organized enough to use military-grade tech like this PDA, they probably have drones or recon teams. We'd be sitting ducks. Our truck has been our lifeline. Good clearance, durable, and fast. I'm not giving it up unless there's no other option. We need answers, Caroline said firmly, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. And this PDA might be the key. If we can unlock it, there's no telling what intel we can find inside. Who they are, who's pulling the strings, and why they're after us. Standing there in the arid wasteland, surrounded by the eerie quiet of the aftermath, an invisible noose seemed to tighten around us. The sandstorm of questions swirling through my mind was relentless. We'll figure it out, I promised, more to myself than to them. But for now, we move. If they sent one team, they'll send another when this one doesn't check in. Murphy extinguished his cigarette on the Humvee's charred wreckage while Caroline climbed into the truck, scanning the horizon through her rifle's scope. As for me, I shoved the mysterious PDA into my backpack, a cold foreboding settling in my gut. With the vengeance-fueled adrenaline wearing off, a chilling thought rushed in to fill the void. Whoever sent these soldiers wasn't interested in bargaining or warnings. They wanted one simple thing: elimination. And now, the question wasn't just how to survive. It was about staying one step ahead of an enemy unknown, with motives unclear, in a world already consumed by chaos. All right, I called out, wiping the sweat and sand from my face. Let's move out. We've got a lot of road ahead of us, and I have a feeling this is only the beginning. As the engine roared back to life and our truck rumbled forward into the open desert, the wreckage of the Humvee disappeared in the rearview mirror, leaving only dust clouds and unanswered questions in its wake. We didn't look back. Open it. What's this? Murphy, climbing into the cabin of the Hummer, hauled out several oddly shaped guns. They were black metal cylinders about a meter long. The front end housed a large convex lens, while the middle featured a trigger and grip. At the rear was a rectangular glass panel. I located what looked like a switch and pressed it. The panel lit up, displaying 2 rows of information. Battery, 95%. Power, 50%. I turned a knob above the trigger, watching as the power level shifted. It maxed out at 100%. This clearly wasn't your average weapon. I exchanged a cautious glance with Murphy and Carolyn. Taking the hint, they instinctively moved a safe distance away. I hefted the hefty weapon onto my shoulder, aimed it at a far-off sand dune, and pulled the trigger. Whum! A powerful fan roared to life from the weapon's rear, and scorching heat gushed from the vents. The next instant, a brilliant purple beam, crackling with destructive energy, erupted silently from the lens and obliterated the sand dune in the distance. That purple beam moved silently, as if it drained the very air around it. I glanced at the panel and noticed the battery had dropped by 10%. One shot at full power consumes 10% of the battery, I noted aloud. Is that a laser gun? Murphy muttered, still rubbing her eyes from the blast of light. No. Carolyn studied the weapon, shaking her head slowly. Lasers burn, but this feels more like purification. Look at the ring of purple LED lights circling the lens. They're not decorative. They're more like a warning light. A warning light. Like the ultraviolet sterilizers you find in hospitals, Carolyn explained as her thoughts clicked into place. They glow purple to warn you when they're active. This thing isn't shooting lasers. It's emitting high-intensity UV or something similar. She turned the power dial to 10% and pulled the trigger again. A dim purple flash flickered for a brief second. As the gun powered down, a blood-red M logo flashed briefly on the glass panel. "Look!" Carolyn rushed to me, excitedly pointing at the same logo on my weapon. "That's the Meyer Corporation symbol again." A chill ran down my spine. From the USB drive we had found in that navigator back in Hurley Town to the advanced tech weapons wielded by the squad hunting us, everything was pointing back to Meyer Corporation, a company that seemed to have its hands in everything. Do you think they're after you?" I asked, looking at Carolyn. A terrifying possibility began forming in my mind. "Me?" She blinked, confused. "I'm just here scouting factory sites. Quit overthinking it. Let's move." Murphy interrupted, shaking a military-grade smoke grenade in her hand. Clearly, she was already thinking of ways to turn it into a bomb. Back at our hideout on the cliff's edge, my first order of business was to grab the PDA weed recovered from that lieutenant and crush it under a shotgun blast. Whatever tracking measures the enemy had in place, they were severed now. As far as spoils of war went, our haul was incredible. 5 M17 pistols, 3 M16A4 rifles decked out with tactical gear, 1 MP5 submachine gun, a military-grade drone, and ammo to spare. We had never been this well armed. 5 seconds delay done, Murphy announced proudly, holding up what now looked like a makeshift tin can bomb. She had successfully modified the grenade with a delayed fuse. With a loud bang and a brilliant plume of blue flames, her test run was a success. We redistributed the weapons. Everyone carried a pistol now. Murphy took the MP5, while Carolyn stuck with her trusty AR-15, practically an extension of her at this point. But peace didn't last long. That evening, the chilling howls of wolves, mixed with guttural growls, echoed from below the cliff. Through a scope, we watched a grotesque scene of survival. Dozens of zombified dogs hunting a pack of North American wolves. A wounded wolf fell, but minutes later, it staggered back onto its feet, its eyes glowing with a sinister red hue. It turned on its former pack, joining the ranks of the hunters. "They found us," Murphy shouted, panic in her voice. Gunfire was our first line of defense. Carolyn's precision shots took down 3 zombie dogs, but the others quickly adapted, pressing forward through our blind spots as they charged up the slope. A sharp alarm rang out from the traps Murphy had set, tin can bombs rigged to wires. But before the traps even detonated, the furious barking suddenly twisted into high-pitched yelps. And then, dead silence. Ruhar! An inhuman roar reverberated like a shockwave, making my head feel like it was splitting open. "Headphones! Now!" Carolyn shouted. She tossed us noise-canceling headsets salvaged from our last raid, her foresight saving us just in time. The distinct crack of a whip slicing through the air announced something was coming. And then, we saw it. A monster emerged into our sights. That thing barely retained the silhouette of a dog, but its shoulder height reached nearly 5 feet, its entire body covered in bony armor and knotted muscles. The most horrifying part was its head. What should have been a mouth suddenly split open wide, like a blooming, tooth-filled Venus flytrap. From within, dozens of tentacle-like appendages erupted, whipping through the air with sharp cracks. Disgusting. Murphy's voice trembled as she spoke. Bang! The shotgun in my hands roared, and 8 buckshots slammed into its gaping maw with ferocious force. But the lead pellets bounced off as if they'd struck solid steel. I floored the gas pedal, the truck roaring as it thundered down the slope. Damn it! This place had terrible feng shui. As soon as the truck lurched forward, one of the creature's appendages whipped out like lightning, slamming into the armored front wheel with a sharp metallic clang. It's catching up. The speed of that thing was insane. It was faster than our full-throttle truck. Caroline switched to blue rounds and held her breath as she aimed. But the creature was incredibly cunning, dodging her shots by mere inches with an almost supernatural instinct for bullet trajectories. Suddenly, a sharp sense of danger made Caroline's skin crawl. Every hair on her body stood on end as she instinctively lunged toward Murphy's side of the cab. Thud! A tentacle pierced through the iron bars of the truck's rear guardrails, stabbing viciously into the space Caroline had been sitting just a second earlier. Murphy screamed, emptying an entire magazine of MP5 rounds. Sparks flew as bullets ricocheted uselessly off the beast's armored body. It clamped its toothed appendage firmly onto the rear of our truck, anchoring itself like a grappling hook. I'd like to see you dodge this. Caroline spun around, planting her gun squarely against the tentacle latched near her. Without hesitation, she pulled the trigger. The blue round severed the tentacle instantly. The creature let out a guttural howl, rolling and thrashing as it was flung away by the momentum. But when we turned to look, it was gone. All that remained was the severed tentacle, burning with eerie blue flames, smoldering on the ground. It went into the woods. Murphy shouted. The next second, the monster reemerged, this time alongside the truck, running parallel at terrifying speed. Oh, hell no. Murphy began frantically firing with her M16, only to be met with a catastrophic crack. The gun snapped apart in her hands. It's the blue ammo. You can't use it in a standard rifle, she exclaimed, as the ruined weapon smoldered in defeat. We'd just lost a critical means of firepower. Realizing this, the beast attacked more boldly, its tentacles smashing against the armored passenger side window. Cracks began spiderwebbing across the bulletproof glass, each shuddering blow driving us closer to despair. It was toying with us, and that was when Murphy moved. Grabbing a canister grenade, she began murmuring a countdown under her breath, fingers steady as she pulled the pin. 3, 2, 1. She shoved open the rear shooting hatch and hurled the grenade with pinpoint accuracy. A blinding burst of blue flames erupted behind us as the grenade detonated. The shockwave hit the truck like an unseen hand, shoving it forward with overwhelming force. Behind us, the mutant zombie dog was flung backward into a tumbling mass of torn flesh and fury. In the rearview mirror, a ball of blue fire swirled like a raging inferno, marking the beast's demise. Plus 200 XP gained. The notification appeared, and only then did I allow myself a shaky breath of relief. We stepped out of the truck, the adrenaline in our veins fading as we surveyed the damage. Iron bars pierced by tentacles, the fractures in the bulletproof glass. It all spoke of how close a call we'd had. Caroline's face was pale, her hands trembling. If it weren't for the reinforced window, that last strike would have been the end of her. What the hell was that thing? Murphy muttered, her hands fumbling with the shattered remnants of her M16 as she shuddered. I took out my notebook, determined to analyze and piece together what we had just faced. That thing was no ordinary mutation, I said aloud, jotting down notes feverishly. It showed intelligence. It wasn't just a mindless beast. It herded those zombie dogs, used them to stretch us thin and distract us while it scoped out an opportunity to strike. Its speed, its strength, its defense, everything is on another level. It even predicted Caroline's firing angles. These mutants, Caroline interjected, looking over my notes. They seem to have this instinct to eliminate weaker zombies. Think about it. Why didn't we see any regular zombies in Tyrone Town? Maybe this thing either killed or drove them all off. Something clicked in my head. This virus, I began, frowning at the web of possibilities, or whatever created this disaster. It feels like there's some kind of internal balancing mechanism at play. Regular zombies shy away from sunlight. If left alone, they'd never leave the shadows. But to keep them spreading, there needs to be a shepherd. These mutants, they're brutal, but they drive the infection forward like bloodthirsty herders. But Caroline raised an eyebrow, adding a layer to the dilemma. Didn't that radio transmission from Albuquerque say there were mutants controlling zombies? That's the opposite of what we're suggesting. They were supposedly leaders, not executioners. Not necessarily. I replied, my mind flickering back to an idea from Dune. There, in the shadows, a figure with long, thin fingers waved. It loomed, like an enigma cloaked in its own mystery. Maybe evolution takes on different paths, the voice murmured from the dark. One becomes the mad dog scattering the flock. The other? The alpha wolf leading it. And that shadow? Without question, it was the latter. Either way, this theory gives us an opportunity. Murphy's voice abruptly broke through our thoughts. She placed the busted chamber of a shotgun next to Caroline's AR-15, tapping them lightly. The contrasting sharp sounds echoed through the room. Notice anything? Murphy asked, hitting the truck's armored plating next with the same intention. This AR-15 is made of the same material as our truck now. Both are products of your abilities. And those blue bullets? Same deal. She leaned in close to me, her eyes alight with curiosity and excitement. Your power needs energy to level up, doesn't it? Caroline pieced it together instantly, by killing zombies. Exactly. Murphy almost jumped with enthusiasm. If mutated ones are hurting the regular zombies, why don't we take the fight to them? Hunt those herds? We've got guns, a truck, even explosives now. The sooner we level up, the better odds we have to survive. From fugitives to hunters, that shift in roles sent a long-forgotten surge of thrill coursing through all three of us. Once the plan was set, there was no hesitation in execution. We retraced our route back to the woods where we had spotted that mutated entity corralling its undead flock. The silver truck cut through the forest edge like a ship through open seas, circling at a cautious distance from the horde. Your turn. Murphy barked after emptying her magazine with precise bursts, skillfully swapping places with Caroline. Caroline propped the AR-15 onto the truck's firing slit, her posture steady, measured. Each squeeze of the trigger released a blue-tinted trail of death, carving a straight path into the horde. Each zombie hit by the ethereal projectiles erupted into ghostly blue flames before crumpling to the ground. Give me that big guy. Murphy grinned manically, hefting the purple glow weapon onto her shoulder. Setting the power level to 100%, she leveled the weapon at the horde's densest cluster and pulled the trigger. A blazing beam of pure violet shot forth like divine judgment, obliterating a dozen zombies in one blinding strike. In an instant, the area hit was reduced to ashen debris, carried away by a passing gust. That's enough. As soon as the leveling prompt appeared in my view, I floored the pedal. The truck roared with newfound force, leaving the remnants of the horde in the dust. Captain, hurry. Show us your superpower. Murphy hollered impatiently, practically buzzing with anticipation. Vehicle upgrade, LV6. Reward option selected. Add a weapon mounting platform with a 100-bullet capacity magazine. The choice was obvious. In an instant, a faint blue glow enveloped the passenger seat where Caroline sat. When the light receded, a compact, futuristic turret slowly emerged above her. Designed with sleek armored curves, it looked like something straight out of a sci-fi movie. Caroline mounted her AR-15 onto the mount. The gun snapped securely into place, aligning with a gimbal and stabilizer setup. No matter how the truck jolted, the gun's aim stayed precise. And as she rotated the gun, her entire seat seamlessly spun in a synchronized 360-degree motion. At the same time, the blue bullet box was reshaped into a convenient, circular drum magazine attached directly to the rifle. A little screen on the side proudly displayed 65 rounds available. Oh my God! Caroline crawled back into the cab, her face alight with awe. It's like a divine turret. Armed with a surge of fresh experience points, we were brimming with confidence. I decided to head back to Tyrone Town, where we could refill our fuel and scavenge more supplies. As we'd hoped, with that mutated creature gone, the place was an eerie ghost town. We filled up every gas canister we had and raided the convenience store until its shelves were left barren. Driving through the town square, Caroline suddenly called out from her turret, dead ahead. 11 o'clock. I think that's an auto repair shop. Murphy's eyes practically lit up like a small child seeing Christmas lights. A repair shop. Oh, hell yes. If this area is clear for now, let's go see if there are any materials we can use. She excitedly pounded on the back of my seat. We're going to turn the Murphy Plus Mobile into an absolute beast. Once we lowered the repair shop's rolling steel doors behind us, we found refuge within what felt like a fortress of tools and steel amidst the desolate silence outside. Holy crap, this place makes my old garage look like garbage, Murphy exclaimed, practically bouncing between various equipment with giddy excitement. An idea seemed to sprout in her head almost instantly, and before long, she was rattling off her plans for upgrades, directing me to lug over 2 hulking steel plates. What are you up to this time? I asked warily, noting her mischievous grin. Oh, just strapping a battering ram to old silver, she declared with unrestrained glee, eagerly holding the plates up to the truck's front grille. And while we're at it, let's reinforce your driver's cabin. Upgrade it too. Old silver? Carolyn and I asked in unison. It's the name I gave it. So cozy, right? Murphy explained, not even looking up as she started using a plasma cutter on the steel plates. Sparks flew everywhere, illuminating her focused and excited face. While Murphy was busy with her surgery, Carolyn and I started organizing the completely emptied cargo boxes. We sorted all the supplies into categories: self-heating meals, canned goods, and even two stuffed toys that somehow made their way in, a capybara and a panda. With the generator and freezer in play, our logistical capabilities improved greatly. The only issue was running out of space in the storage box. "No problem," Murphy said confidently, lifting her welding mask and wiping the sweat off her face. "Once I'm done with the cab, I'll give the cargo area an upgrade too." By evening, Murphy's masterpiece was finally complete. A menacing, wedge-shaped ram, narrower at the front and wider at the back, was securely welded to the front of the truck. It transformed the previously clunky truck cab into something far more aggressive. She had also restructured the metal blinds in the cab, making them operable for a perfect balance between visibility and safety. Under Murphy's instructions, the three of us worked together, welding shelves and securing clasps onto the inside of the cargo box using materials from the repair shop. The generator, freezer, and every piece of equipment were reorganized, transforming the space into an efficient and tidy storage system. Looking at the rejuvenated and battle-ready Old Silver, Carolyn and I were even more in awe of Murphy's skills than before. Survival points +3 from Carolyn Jane. Survival points +3 from Miranda Murphy. Without hesitation, I allocated all 6 points to Murphy's repair skill. "Ow!" Murphy yelped, clutching her head as if pricked by a needle. She frowned at the momentary pain, but quickly shrugged it off. Miranda Murphy's special skill Repair has been activated. Repair passively restores vehicles. Currently, vehicles within an 11-meter radius of Miranda Murphy will automatically repair themselves. I turned to look at the armor plate earlier dented by a mutant zombie hound. To our astonishment, the dented plate began to unbend and return to its original state, slowly and silently, as if brought to life. "Captain, what's on your mind?" Murphy's voice snapped me out of my trance. "Nothing," I replied, stifling my amazement with a smile. "Just thinking about our next move. Out of town. Find higher ground and keep laying low," I decided, stretching as I spoke. As night fell, the upgraded Old Silver carved a path up a hillside with its newly fitted ram, returning us to our familiar cliffside outpost. Meanwhile, 10,000 meters above, an RQ-4 Global Hawk reconnaissance drone silently soared across the sky. San Diego Naval Base, California. A rear admiral scrutinized a blank video feed on the monitor, his brow furrowed in frustration. "Admiral," an officer said, placing a satellite photo on the desk. "Global Hawk sent this back. The target team was completely wiped out." The photo showed an overturned Humvee and scattered bodies. "And the experimental weapon they were carrying?" the admiral asked, his voice low and grave. "Missing, sir." The admiral took a deep breath, then dialed into a secure communication line. "Yadin," he said through gritted teeth, his anger barely contained. "How do you plan to clean up this mess?" On the other end, a calm voice countered. "Admiral, isn't it your team that still hasn't located the target individual? New Mexico is out of control. Admiral, the target individual is key. Without her, forget New Mexico, the entire United States could be in jeopardy. Rest assured, though, you and I will be just fine. And what's the deal with that mutant? Even 2F divided by a -18S couldn't take it down. If it were that easy to handle, you and those politicians wouldn't be funding us, would you?" The voice on the phone replied with a tinge of sarcasm. "Admiral, wars, you're familiar with them. That's your domain. My job is to secure the target individual." The admiral tightened his fists as the dial tone rang in his ear. Eventually, he called another number. When it connected, a voice emanating authority said simply, "Come see me." Back at the cliffside, I habitually flicked on the truck's radio. The broadcast from the survivor camp continued its loop, though there was some updated information. Today, we successfully repelled 2 separate zombie horde attacks, proving that we have what it takes to survive in the face of danger. We're urgently seeking survivors with medical expertise or those carrying essential supplies. I switched off the radio, a cloud of suspicion weighing on my mind. A camp so close to the fallen zone seemed. A camp less than 500 kilometers from Albuquerque. How could it possibly hold back a horde of the undead? Unless I unfolded the map, and a daring idea surfaced in my mind. Could it be that the evolved creature, the shadow on the dunes, the one capable of commanding the infected, had never intended to target these scattered survivors at all? Could its real objective all along have been the Kirtland Air Force Base, southeast of Albuquerque? If that's the case, I can't believe it, but a small part of me feels a strange sense of anticipation. The night grew deeper. I glanced at the two little girls sleeping soundly beside me, curled up in their blankets with their stuffed toys snuggled close. A fierce protectiveness welled up in me. Quietly, I climbed out of the vehicle. Taking out a knife and some alcohol, I needed to confirm something. Disinfecting the blade, I took a deep breath and sliced a shallow cut across my palm. Bright red, normal blood slowly seeped from the wound, clear and healthy. I exhaled in relief. Ignoring the sharp sting, I pressed my bloodied palm onto old Silver's door handle. The instant I touched it, a faint buzz rang in my head. Host successfully bound to vehicle. System store updated. I wasted no time calling up the store interface. The last row of items, that had always been mosaiced out, was finally clear. Life restoration syringe. Miracle oil enhances object durability, external use only. Antifungal vaccine. Prevents zombie infection upon injection. Mental stamina potion. I stopped breathing for a moment. Especially that vaccine. In a world like this, its significance couldn't be overstated. But then I saw the price tags and nearly cursed it aloud. Every newly unlocked item was listed at 100 survival points each. With my current rate of earning just 6 points a day, I sighed internally and adjusted my priorities. New short-term goal: make sure these two girls live like royalty in the back of this car. Thanks to our new eye in the sky, the drone, our hunts became both safer and exponentially more efficient. After surveying 3 abandoned towns with it, we identified Silver City as the optimal hunting ground. It had the lowest density of zombies. The mission was straightforward: clear the place out before any military action or more evolved monsters showed up, and earn enough experience to upgrade Old Silver. Our strategy was simple, loud, fast, and ruthless. The truck would park just outside town, its blaring horn rousing the crowd of undead from their eerie stillness. Caroline stood atop what she proudly called her God's turret, her AR-15 spitting precise streams of blue fire that sliced deadly corridors through the oncoming horde. Once the infected had bunched up enough, I revved Old Silver hard, dragging a train of growling, lurching followers across the open plains in a dangerous game of cat and mouse. Murphy manned the rear, alternating between 4 ultraviolet weapons and mowing down the stragglers in efficient sweeps, like a farmer harvesting grain. By the time the last ultraviolet round vaporized our nearest pursuers, the experience counter on our panel had surged by another 170 points. Our day's hunt was over. Heading back toward Talon Town, a low, ominous rumble drew my attention to the horizon. 2 fighter jets flanked a C-17 transport plane, their contrails streaking white lines toward the southwest skies. The military's up to something big, I muttered, a growing dread curling in my gut. With cell signals jammed, state borders blockaded, and no news of survivor quarantines or rescues, a line from that survivor camp broadcast haunted me. Asterisk, don't trust the federal government. Asterisk. I slammed the wheel, determination setting in. We're going up high to take a look. When we reached the ridge, we could see it. Thick, choking pillars of smoke rising above Roseburg. Oh my God, Murphy gasped, her voice trembling as she peered through the binoculars. They're shelling Roseburg. The earth shuddered as a relentless barrage of artillery tore through the landscape like the scythe of death itself. Buildings and rubble disintegrated into clouds of ash, while wave after wave of undead were obliterated in fiery bursts of destruction. Above the post-apocalyptic earthen wasteland, 4 Apache helicopters swooped low. Their payloads of rockets rained down viciously, indiscriminately shredding whatever remained. Then, from the inferno erupted it, the same bone-clad beast we had encountered before. In one horrifying leap, it collided mid-air with one of the Apaches, ripping the attack chopper in half with monstrous might. But its defiance meant nothing against the ferocity of a nation's war machine. Another wave of artillery zeroed in, thoroughly saturating its position. Following closely, 2 A-10 Warthogs thundered in, their infamous Gu-8 Avenger cannons unleashing a vengeful chain of fire that transformed the ruinous blast zone into a torn wasteland. Under the merciless hail of bullets and ordnance, the once indomitable mutated creature was reduced to a mist of gore and shattered bone. What happened next, though, left us utterly horrified. They're eating it," Murphy stammered, horror laced in her voice. Through the binoculars, we saw the remaining zombies feasting on the torn, bloody remnants of the mutation. As they consumed its flesh, the body began to convulse violently, swelling and distorting as muscle tore through skin and bones grew at an unnatural rate. In mere moments, several newly mutated creatures towering over 2 meters tall were born. But in front of the military's main tank cannons, the freshly evolved creatures were still nothing more than insignificant ants. 3 of the monstrous beings, moments after their transformation, were obliterated into crimson mist. The remaining 2, however, displayed shocking intelligence. No longer charging in blindly, they began scavenging parts of their fallen comrades' remains, devouring them as they moved. Utilizing the debris and rubble around them, they skillfully played a game of cat and mouse with the military forces. A brutal urban skirmish unfolded amidst the ruins. Tanks, infantry, and armed helicopters worked in perfect coordination, weaving a near-impenetrable net of fire and steel. One mutated creature, standing at over 3 meters tall, was taken down after ambushing some soldiers. It was shredded apart by the combined fire of a tank shell and the Apache's chain guns. Layers of its muscular tissue were peeled away, revealing an eerie, vine-like internal structure before it was finally incinerated by a flamethrower. The other creature made a desperate leap towards an attacking helicopter, only to be intercepted midair by a tank shell that had been lying in wait for the perfect strike. "That thing's getting away," Murphy suddenly shouted. We all turned to see the mutated creature, its chest blown open with a gaping hole, staggering to the ground, but not dying. Instead, it crouched low, coiling its legs before launching itself with an explosive force, skimming across the ground like a fired cannonball, clouds of dust trailing in its wake. Its direction? Straight toward us. "Caroline, line it up. Take the shot," I yelled toward the vehicle, adrenaline surging as my heart hammered in my chest. It was like a gift from above, 200 experience points delivered straight to our door. The panicked mutant, clearly disoriented, unintentionally barreled headfirst toward the base of the cliff we had stationed ourselves on. Just as it began to reroute, a single, silent shot with a glowing blue trail fired from the cliffside. The bullet tore clean through its body. The creature glanced down in disbelief at the blue flames igniting across its skin. As it turned into a fiery inferno, it didn't even comprehend where the deadly shot had come from. Plus 200 EXP. The experience bar on my interface now showed I was only 500 points from leveling up, a sense of urgency like never before swelling in my chest. "Get in the van. Move," I barked at the still-stunned girls standing beside me. "If we're too slow, the military's going to snatch all the experience." The plan needed acceleration. The silver cargo van, ghostly in the darkness, roared back towards Silver City. This time, there was no holding back. Murphy retrofitted the last 4 canned bombs into makeshift landmines, carefully rigging them along the zombie horde's predictable routes. Revving the engine, I slammed on the horn, tearing wildly through the town like a madman, collecting the attention of every zombie in the area. When the massive horde funneled into the trap zone, for simultaneous bursts of blue flame erupted into the night skies as the mines detonated one after another. The thunderous collisions and haunting blue fire consumed a massive portion of the zombie mob. Plus 100 EXP. Plus 100 EXP. Hold tight. I hollered at the 2 girls in the van as I saw the aftermath of the explosions. Though many had fallen, the flood of zombies was still surging toward us without pause. Slamming the gas pedal to the floor, I made the decision. The heavily modified Old Silver, humming with raw power, roared forward like a force of nature, smashing headfirst into the oncoming horde.